that some of you now experience on a standard pattern that is made to a standard size. So see, that's what the leaflet has to do with, and that's what we're going to do in the first part of the class. We're going to show you how to take these little tiny designs that are on this leaflet, make them into big ones. In other words, we'll show you how to take a little tiny Sean, how many of you been to that? A couple of you have. This is a totally different class. Totally different. So you can learn something at every one of these classes. If you only learn one thing and you use the one thing you've learned, it's worth the time you spend to come to these things. Now, the idea of this method, I guess, is new to most every one of you in here. Outside the United States have been making patterns of this method in France, Germany, England, Australia, Italy, Spain, South Africa, Sweden, Canada, Mexico. This method is currently being used in 27 different countries and in 19 different languages. In fact, if you live in a lot of those countries, you'd be able to get this kind of a pattern I'm going to show you. A lot of the major fabric shops, the finer department store, we have our designers will put on pattern making classes for people who like to make patterns for their own measurement. Now, when the people are buying a set of pattern in foreign country, they don't have to pay what? What do you have to pay for patterns nowadays? $1 each? $1 each. If you average out, probably average of $5 for a set of patterns, and those are the ones out of the newspaper, or $12 or $15 for the Vogue designer pattern, which is just more pieces. What happens is over in Europe, the people buy what we call a fashion supplement full of patterns. See, 4 times every year, in the spring, summer, fall, and winter, we have our designers in Europe that make up new ideas. We have mathematicians that figure all those numbers you're looking at around the couple designs that you have on your leaflet. On the first page, one of these quarterly fashion supplements, which I have up here, there's a model. This happens to be a fall supplement, and on the back, there's a little tiny miniature design. Now, if you notice, there is quite a difference. There's quite a difference in this method of patterns and the patterns that you know about in this country. Of course, if you notice the pattern I'm going to talk about, it's in a miniature form. And if you notice the other difference on those little designs, we use the international means of measuring with our method, which is the metric system. Centimeters, centimeters, Some lady just fell off her chair in the corner back there. How many of you don't know anything about centimeters? They weren't teaching about those when I was in school. You don't have to know anything about a centimeter. All you have to do is know how to read. If you can read the numbers that you have around the couple designs around that leaflet, can you read those numbers? Okay, then you'll be able to make these patterns. So don't close your mind because of a centimeter. Now I'm going to explain how we make the patterns and why they fit so nice. And I'll actually go ahead and make that waistcoat real quick for one of the ladies of the class so you can see how this will work for you when you get the two patterns you have in your leaflet home. How we're able to make the pattern, why they fit so nice, it goes back to a number of years ago. There was a man studying the human anatomy. You know what the human anatomy is? The study of your body. Leonardo da Vinci was the guy's exact name, and he discovered that the human body and face is in mathematical proportion to itself. How many in here has ever heard that? A couple of you have? And there's only 3 figure types for man or woman. How many of you knew there's only 3 figure types? Endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph. If you knew anything about artwork or drawing human figures, you would. What did you used to buy to wrap around your fist? Remember you used to go to the clothing store to see if you get the right size? What was that? Yeah, wrap a sock around your fist. It's the size of your foot. A couple of you have heard that, haven't you? A couple of you. Twice around your wrist is the width of your neck. Length of your nose, your forehead, your ear, and this area here, all the same. Size of one of your eyes, same distance between your eyes. Length of your hands, length of your face. Fingertip to fingertips, your body height. Your body's 8 heads high. Distance from your chin to your navel is exactly the same from knee to your ankle. From here to there, same from here to there. Hold your arms out like this. Look at the distance from here to there, and that's the size of your foot. I can't help it if you've got a big foot. Does that look big? That's no joke. It's the size of your foot. See, if you close it up now, it looks a little better. In fact, when you go home, put your shoe in there, it looks a little better. Don't a lot of you go to the fabric store and get a yard? Tip your nose, your finger. That might not be exactly yard, but it's pretty close. You know, we can stand up here all morning and rattle these things off 39 times faster than we just did. See the top of your eyebrow? It's equal top of your ear. Right there where your index finger bends be the length of your nose. A lady told me one day, twice around your neck is your waist. There are exceptions to these things, isn't there? Some of us are born with deformity. Some of us have operation. Some of us have extreme figure-type problems of some kind. Now, by knowing the human body's arm proportion to themselves, this has been reduced to 2 measurements. See, the only 2 measurements you need to take to make the couple designs you have on your leaflet, it tells you right on your leaflet there, doesn't it? Are the bust and the hip. Now, when we measure, we're going to measure differently than you've ever seen. We're going to measure the biggest part of one of you above the waist. Biggest part of you above the waist. Isn't that a circle? Say yes if you understand. Blink your eyes, wiggle your nose, move your ears, nod your head, stick your tongue out, do something so we know you're following along. We're also going to measure the biggest part of one of you below the waist. Biggest part of you below the waist. Isn't that a circle? That's a circle too, isn't it? Remember in math class they were teaching all about the circles? If you know the distance around the circle, which is called the circumference, right? Isn't there a special formula to find out what's inside? Pi r squared, is that one of them? There's formulas to find anything you want to know about the circle. See, the same ideas have been applied to all those numbers you're looking at around the couple designs that you have on your leaflet. By knowing the human body's arm proportion to themselves, there's 6 mathematical formulas that we use to compute the numbers, whereas by measuring like we do and finding out what's around you in these 2 places, we can pretty much figure out what's inside. I don't think you want a lesson in geometry. I think you want to see the results. Who cares how it works? We're going to show you how nice it does work. So what we're going to do is make the waistcoat. One of the ladies here at the class. The only reason for making this waistcoat is when we get into the class a little bit later on, some of you in here, you're going to like this idea so well on how to make patterns for your own measurement, designing your own pattern, that you're going to want to take it further rather than just the 2 patterns we gave you on the leaflet. So you have 2 patterns on a leaflet, which you can make. You've got a vest on the front there, and you have a dress pattern on the back there. Do you see that? If you like the idea of making a pattern for your own measurement, designing your own pattern, you can look through the rest of these designs later. Now, when you measure to make the pattern, you should measure in foundation garments. That means without your clothes on, so I need a lady to volunteer. Might want to shut those curtains over there. We don't do the foundation garments here at the class for obvious reasons. That's why we have to make the waistcoat. You understand why we make the waistcoat? Because it's an outer garment. It's a sleeveless jacket. It's going to fit like a coat. I'm going to explain how it's going to fit now, and I don't even know who we're going to make it for. Before everybody comes running up here to be the model, we need a person with sleeves on. The reason we need a person with sleeves on is because of the way the waistcoat's going to fit. Shoulder seam will be a little bigger than your normal set-in shoulder. More important in the shoulder is the armhole. Armhole will drop way down into here to accommodate a bulky sleeve or sweater. It'll fit like a coat in the shoulder and armhole area, Watch to see if it does when we trot on the person we have. So who's going to be the model? Doesn't make any difference who. Big, long, short, or tall. We can make a pattern for you all if there's enough time. Take your clothes off and come up here. Doesn't make a difference. Just so you have a sleeve on. Anybody has sleeves is fine. Okay, what's your name?
Desi Andrew.
What was the first?
Desi.
Desi? Okay, Desi.
I'm the only one of this.
Okay, Desi, you can stand right about there. Face me. Put your arms up like you're down in 42nd Street, New York, just like that. That's good. Anybody measure themselves like that? Haven't found a one person yet. Now, with your arms up, you have to have somebody help you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you can put your arms down. Now, you see where the tape goes? You see how high that is? When you make these patterns, you get the tape across the broadest part of the back. Get the shoulder blades in there. Men, children are measured the same way to make the pattern like we're showing you. Now, it's no mistake the pattern fits back here. You can see why we have the measurement. Tied up underneath the arms is in that first place. A lot of bigger people gain weight. These will fit there, too. Okay, turn around the front, Desi. That's good. Back up just so everybody can see. High across the back, tied up underneath the arms. Keep your arms down. And you take it across the broadest part in the front. Now, to get a proper measurement, just take the tape, pull it up tight, leave it loose as just you in there. You don't stick your fingers in there for easy launch. These things have already been figured out. Desi measures 116 centimeters. Okay, hold on.
Gee, I thought it was 36.
Let me write that down. 116. Let's see. Everybody understand how to get the proper measurement? High across the back, tied up underneath the arms, across the broadest part in the front. See the difference the way you have to measure. Make these patterns the way most of you now measure. Most of you measure straight across the back here. See, the whole difference is we measure across the high part in the back. We've still taken across the biggest part in the front. That's easy enough, isn't it? Okay. Now, the next measurement you're concerned with to make slacks, skirts, bottoms, and dresses is what we'll call the hip measurement, or the biggest part of you below the waist. Now, you can do this on your own because, of course, you can see down here. Where do you measure the hips? Is a little rule you want to follow. And the little rule is this. If you intend to cover it, we suggest you measure it. So what's that mean? Nobody knows what that means? We're going to give you a test when the class is over. Anybody fails is staying after the class. It means the biggest part, doesn't it? Okay, you can stand right there, Desi. Face the people. Put your feet together. Put your arms up just like this. That's good. What you do is go right below the waist. You put the tape across the biggest part of your backside, biggest part of your derriere, wherever that's the biggest. Then you take it over the biggest lump on your hips. Some people's hips are down here, some middle and some up higher. Then you take it right up to your waist here, right about to where you're going to wear your pants. That's 114. Okay, thank you, Desi. You can have a seat. I'll do it again on me in case you missed it. You put the tape across the biggest part of your backside, biggest part of your derriere, wherever that's the biggest. Then you take it over the biggest lump on your hip. Some people's hips are down here, some middle, and some up higher. Then you take it right up your waist here, right about to where you're going to wear your pants. That way, if you have one of these, or both, we've got you covered. What was that number? 114? Oh, listen. If you're a smaller to medium-sized person, it would be okay. If you're a smaller to medium-sized person, it's okay to measure straight around like you normally do until you get the biggest part. If you're smaller to medium-sized, it would be okay to measure straight around like you normally do until you get the biggest part. But if you're a medium-large to large person, it's best to measure like we've shown you. We found that the slacks and skirts and so on will fit a little bit better measuring like this on the bigger people. As long as you're close with that measuring, you don't have to be that exact. What? As long as you're close with the measurements, you don't have to be that exact. Okay, now if you notice, Desi has a problem already. She's a little bit different from top to bottom. Well, who doesn't have that problem? Isn't that one of the biggest fitting problems that some people have when they get a pattern? Get one that fits up here, right, and it won't fit down here. Get one that fits down here, it doesn't fit up here. See, in this part of the class, when you make a pattern for your own measurement, we can take care of the two sides problem, different from top to bottom, and I'll point that out in a little while. Okay, is everybody on the page, the waistcoat? Okay, what you do as soon as you get home, you want to rip your whole page off your leaflet like I'm going to do here. You know, you make your waistcoat first for practice, because, of course, practice makes perfect. You make this waistcoat first, because that's when we make here at the class. You pin your little pattern down somewhere about the center of your board. What kind of board's this? It's a pattern-making board or pattern-cutting board. Most of you have one of these boards anyway, don't you? You know, the things that don't lay flat when they're new. You don't have to have this board. Well, they don't. You don't have to have the board to make that pattern. You can get an old box or piece of plywood or whatever you want. What kind of paper to use? Well, we carry some paper along to class which is called vellum paper. This just happens to be the same vellum paper that's special manufactured only for garment industry, for pattern making. In other words, it's a lot stronger than the tissue paper to make a ready-made pattern on. It's wide enough for any pattern, front or back. Now, we really shouldn't use the vellum paper in class to make the pattern. The reason we shouldn't use it in the class is when I tape it down to the board, you can see right through it. A lot of times, if there's a real large class, the people way in the back, they couldn't see anything but that board under there. Then they think that board has something to do with making those patterns. You understand that board doesn't have anything to do with making those patterns? Okay, good. What's the advantage of being able to see through it? Of course, if you have designs you want to match on cloth, you can see what you're doing. You ever try to put a piece of tape on a commercial pattern when adjusting it and take it off? What happens sometimes? Yeah, sometimes it destroys your pattern, doesn't it? Well, see, you could tape this up all day long. You could write on it with a magic marker without it coming through because it's wax coated. In other words, it can also be used to correct your present patterns you already have at home. How would you use it for that? You know, like to preserve them as well as making your own. We do carry some rolls along into class, of course, for your convenience, because unless you're a paper distributor, the only way you can get vellum paper roll like this is if you've been to the other class, is it starts out in a roll like this. Then we even had to have an engineer design a machine puts on these little rolls. I call it fabric paper. If you hold it up to the light and look at it, it's a rag content. There's enough paper on one of these rolls to make or adjust at least 3 full sets of patterns, depends on how big you are and what you're making. And on the average, most of you make about 7 garments a year. We're going to pass these things around after we talk about them so you can look at it and get a feel of it. Now when we pass these things around, let's keep the vellum paper on this side of the room. If it gets the lady back there, that lady will give it to you. That way it winds up right back here. You can just set these things on the corner of the floor over there. Now we're going to make the waistcoat for Desi. It fits above the waist, so of course we're concerned what number to make the waistcoat. I didn't tell you, but I think you can figure that out. What number would we use? 116, right? See, everything that Desi makes above the waist, if it fits above the waist, like a bodice, a sleeve, a collar, only number she needs is 116. If it fits below the waist, like slacks, shorts, culotte, skirt, everything fits below the waist, the only number she needs is 114. Most of you have 2 different numbers because you are different from top to bottom. If you happen to have the same number, don't worry about it. Okay, go to the front page of your leaflet where it shows you the special scale. Okay, on your leaflet there, we've supplied you with a special scale. Now, if you notice the scale has numbers on it, do you see how it starts at 50? Yes? Okay. And it goes all the way up to 140? Okay. The numbers on the scale represent the graduation of people's measurement. Not only that, they are the proportion of the human body. We can make a pattern for 50 centimeters around. You know how small it is? That's that big. That's 18 inches around. Or we can make a pattern for 140 centimeters around, which is equivalent to 58 inches around. We hope everybody falls between the 50. Yeah, you know what? You may want to sit over there at the end there. That way you don't have to keep running back and forth. Okay. We hope everybody falls between the 50 and this 140. I think everybody in this class is safely within that range. So your pattern, to your own personal measurement and body proportions, it can be made using the scale. Now, do you see the big number 8 at the bottom of the scale? Does everybody see that? Okay, good. Forget about that for the moment. See the little numbers, how they jog back and forth. 50, 52, 54, 56, 58. 2, 4, 6, 8. Notice they go in twos, don't they? So what if you measured 51? Well, there is no 51. There is no 53. There's no odd numbers on your scale at all. So if you measure an odd number when you're measuring your bust and hip like we've shown you, round it off to the highest even number. Is that clear to everyone? Suppose I've measured Desi 115. What would I do? Yeah, I go to 116. Now the scale I have up here, of course, is a plastic one. We gave you that paper one so you can make the 2 patterns you have on your leaflet, so you don't use it in paper like that. It'll break down, it won't have it. What you do as soon as you get home, you want to cut your scale off your leaflet. You want to reinforce it with a piece of plastic, tape, contact paper, cardboard. Make sure that you reinforce your scale a little bit. Fasten the scale to the 8 centimeter side of your tape measure. Oh, where am I going to get a tape in centimeters? That's no problem. You can't find tapes that don't have centimeters on them anymore. See, like this one. They put centimeters on one side, inches on the other. See how my tape measure doesn't start till the 9th centimeter? You understand why the tape doesn't start till 9? Because the white scale covers the first 8 numbers on the centimeter side in your tape. It shows you right on that leaflet there, doesn't it? I'm going to pass the tape and scale around like you'll have at home so you can see how to fix that scale on your tape properly. Don't ruin that scale or you're out of business. It's part of the equipment necessary in order to make those two patterns you have. See the scale we gave you and those two patterns are the key to making those two patterns. You probably already have a centimeter tape at home ready. Now we're going to make the waistcoat for Desi. It fits above the waist, so of course we're concerned with the number 116. We've already talked about that, didn't we? Okay, find 116 on your scale. Okay, there it is. Now the correct one is the line next to your number. So find 116, find a line next to 116. You see the line that's next to 116? You have to come all the way out to the edge, stick the tack, a little dot. Tack is actually on what color line? It's on the black line, isn't it? Is that clear to everyone? That's the hardest part about this whole thing, because it's the line next to your number. Now the tack's in the scale according to the line next to 116, which is the biggest part of Desi above the waist, because we're going to make the waistcoat, it fits above the waist. Everybody go back to the page of the waistcoat. Now does everybody see the cross or X on the front of your waistcoat or plus sign? It's sort of hidden there in the center of your pattern. Who doesn't see it? Now's the time if you don't. Ask and you shall receive. You don't know if you don't ask. Does everybody see the cross or X or plus sign? Everybody sees it there? Okay, good. Now watch up here. I want you to understand that every one of these miniature patterns in this golden rule we're explaining to you, which is currently being used in Europe and the Orient, the pattern already has the cross or X already placed on a little tiny pattern. Bodice have them, sleeves have them, collars have them, skirts have them, slacks have them. Who put that cross on that pattern? Who put that X there? Yeah, the mathematicians that figure out all the numbers put the X there. So you don't have to worry about how it got there or why. Every miniature pattern has one. Sometimes the cross or X is outside the pattern, especially on a lot of smaller patterns like collars and yokes. It's outside, but it always points toward the pattern it's for. Some of those pattern pieces you don't need the cross or X to make them. Some of the welts, belts, pockets, waistband, like the welt for the waistcoat, the 10 by 3. You just measure out 10 by 3. If you notice the couple designs on the back of your leaflet you have to go home, the pattern has a cross or X. What does X usually do? What does X usually do? Yeah, it marks the spot, doesn't it? So see, if X marks the spot, you see what I'm going to do with the tack with a special scale? I'm going to place it right in the middle of the cross or X, the pattern I'm going to make, see, because X marks the spot. See, it's like pin the tail on the, I know you know that one, on the donkey, except I don't blindfold on. Put the tack right into the middle of the X. See now what we have? We have a tape and scale that revolves around the little miniature pattern. Now you can start anywhere, go anywhere, it doesn't matter. I'm going to start at the bottom of the neckline, at the center front, where the buttons are, where it says 19. Isn't that 19 setting on a little projecting line? There's a little angle line there, isn't there? Can everybody watch up here as best you can? See this white scale? I'm going to swing the scale till it lines up flush with the projecting line that says 19. Line the scale up along the line. See, the line determines the angle you come down the tape. What's the number on the line say? It says 19, right? If everybody could see the tape measure, could everybody find number 19 on the tape? You can all find 19, right? Well, then you can make the pattern. So all you have to do is find 19 on the tape, make a dot. So all you have to do is read numbers and make dots. That's all there is to it. So you see what the white scale's for? See what the little projecting lines extending out your miniature design are for. The white scale and the projecting line, they meet, see? They come together. Listen to this. All you have to do is copy. Copy what? Each projecting line and the number that's on that line. So see what the white scale's for? So you can copy the lines and numbers. Now you can go anywhere, start anywhere, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go clockwise. Next I'm going clockwise is what? 19 and a half? I mean 19.5? Same thing as a half, isn't it? Now listen, how do you know how far apart to go to make the next dot? Yeah, it's the next projecting line. See the white scale? Swing it till it lines up along the next projecting line. Line the scale up along the line. See, the line determines the angle. You come down the tape. It says 19.5. You find 19.5, make a dot. Oh, we don't ever give you anything smaller than 0.5, which is that medium-sized notch there between 19 and 20. So you don't have to try to count the little tiny notches. See what the lines on your pattern also tell you? how far apart to go to make each dot. I'll start all over. First one's 19. Line the scale up along the line. It says 19. You find 19 on the tape, make a dot. How do you know how far apart to go to make the next dot? It's the next projecting line. See the white scale? Swing it till it lines up along the next line. 19.5, make a dot. You understand all you do is read numbers and make dots?
The question I have is best to use the bottom part of the tape measure to make your dot or the top part? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Only one side of the scale lines up along the projecting line. That's the side with the tack or the holes. The other side of the scale won't line up on any line in any pattern.
Okay.
Now when you make your dots, make sure you make the dots on the same side as the tack or the holes. If you did make them on the other side, you'd have a mess. You wouldn't be able to line the pattern in. Okay? Next one's what, 11? Line the scale up along the line, 11 to make a dot. What's that 11 for? Way down inside the pattern. Does anybody know? Does anybody want to guess? Yeah, that's the point for the shoulder dart. See the point down there for the shoulder dart? That's what the 11 is. Some classes get all confused about the 11. Put it this way. Anytime you see a line anywhere near the pattern, if it has a number on it, you don't pass it up because it'll have to do with the pattern. The 11 is the point for the dart. Doesn't 11 have its own projecting line? It's another one just like all the other ones. So what's the white scale for? So you can line it up along the projecting line. It says 11. Line the scale up along the line. The number on the line says 11. So what do you do now? Find 11 on tape, make a dot. You understand that's the point for the dart? If you'd forgotten to mark the 11, you know what would happen when you went to line your pattern in? You wouldn't have any point to line your dart in. When you fit your pattern on your shoulder would be way too big. Next one's what, 37.5? Line the scale up along the line, says 37.5. You find 37.5 on the tape, make a dot. Find it's a lot of fun just making dots. There's the neckline made, isn't it? Isn't that the neckline? Is everybody starting to understand? I know it's awful hard to see. Next is what, 36? Line the scale up along the line, 36 to make a dot. What's the next one, 35? Line the scale up along the line, 35 make a dot. Now look at this. The top 2 points for the shoulder dart are made, aren't they? See the top 2 points for the dart? See what that 11 is now? That's the point of the dart. Isn't the dart made? There's a dart made, isn't it? Next one's what, 33? Line the scale up along the line, 33 and make a dot. You know, you don't have to know nothing about nothing to be able to do this. What do you have to know how to do? Read numbers and make dots. I had a lady ask me the other day, she says, well, wait a minute, if this is so great making a pattern for your own measurement, why hasn't Commercial Pattern Company ever shown me how to make my own pattern for my own measurement? Rather than sell me standard patterns that are made to standard sizes. We didn't get 2 seconds to answer that, lady. Everybody else answered it. They have a good thing going, don't they? They can charge you what? About anything they want, because if you don't use a standard size pattern, you don't sew. Why should I show you how to make a pattern custom fit for your own measurements? That'd be silly, wouldn't it? Next one's what, 19? Line the scale up along the line, 19 to make a dot. What's the next one, 15? Line the scale up along the line, 15 to make a dot. Next one's what, 18? Line the scale up along the line, 18 to make a dot. Now look at this. There's the armhole made, isn't it? Isn't that the armhole? Just that fast. Just that fast. You know, if you're the slowest person we can find to do this, once you practice, of course, it'll take you about 30 to 45 minutes at the longest to make the whole set of patterns, because you do have a front and a back. You have a sleeve, a collar, a skirt. Some of us can't get ready in 45 minutes, let alone find a pattern we want. You know what's more important, time it saves you, or even the money? What's much more important, time or money, this will save you? Yeah, what's more important, time or money, is the outcome. You'll be able to wear it when you get all done. Wouldn't that be different? Okay. Now, we did the 18 at the bottom of the armhole already, didn't we? Okay. See the broken line on the pattern, the dotted line? That's the waist. Next one at the waist is 18. Line the scale up along the line. It says 18. You find 18 on the tape, make a dot. See, all the bodice dots, including the waist up, are made to number 116. The tack is still on the scale according to the line next to 116 when I mark the waist at 18, isn't it? Okay. Now, as far as your questions are concerned, what some of you thinking about right now? You're way ahead of me with all the questions. Just hold on to your question, because as we go along here, we'll be covering every one of them. In fact, we're done at 2 o'clock. You won't have any questions. Nobody ever does. We'll make sure of that. You understand the waist dot's made to 116? That's all we want to get across right now. Now, Desi's a little different below the waist, isn't she? Well, who isn't? Remember I said when making a pattern for your own measurement, we can take care of a 2-size problem, different from top to bottom. How do we take care of that? That's no problem. What do? Yeah, you take the tack out of the crosser X, Out of the biggest part above the waist, what's the biggest part of deci below the waist? 114, right? Where do we put the tack now? Remember, it's a line next to 114. What color would that be? That'd be a red line, wouldn't it? See what changes? Where the tack goes in the scale. So what we're trying to tell you is when you have a one-piece dress, a coat, or a jacket, we only give you one cross or X. Why? Because it's all you need. Waist dot was made to 116, wasn't it? Now you put it back in the same X because there's only one. Now you make all the dots below the waist according to what number? 114. Next one's what? 26? Line the scale up along the line. 26 and make a dot. Number 26 is made to 114, isn't it? Okay. All right. Next one's what? 21? Line the scale up along the line. 21 and make a dot. What's the last one? 20? Line the scale up along the line. 20, make a dot. Now listen, all the dots below the waist are made to what number? 114. You understand how we can take care of a two-size problem different from top to bottom? Of course, if you don't forget to do what? Change that tack, right? Including the waist up goes to 116. All the dots below the waist are made to 114. I'm going to ask you a question before we go any further. When you work with commercial patterns, if you are different from top to bottom, which some of you are, and if you aren't, you will be eventually, what do you do about that? Yeah, you can try to adjust your pattern. What else can you do? You can buy two patterns, right? That was really a loaded question. There's not much you can do except try to adjust the pattern or buy two. You've been adjusting patterns for years, haven't you? Or going to be adjusting patterns for years. I had a lady one day, well, I get two patterns and I'm different from top to bottom. What's wrong with that? Nothing, but if you are concerned with the money, patterns are not cheap anymore. Cheapest ones you get are in the newspaper, and they're $3.75 each, and you have to add for. Does everybody understand how we've got the dots placed? Okay, if you do, we're done with the tape and scale, right? So we'll take it out. Now we have a piece of paper with a bunch of dots. Now what are we going to do now? Yeah, now we're going to play our other game. It's called Connect the Dots. Remember the coloring books we had? They had numbers to follow, didn't they? We don't need any numbers. All you have to do is leave a little guide pin down and copy a straight line or curved line as it indicates. Now, it's kind of hard to do that freehand. So over in Europe, they used to give the people a French curve to help them out. French curve. How many of you in here honestly don't know what a French curve is? How many of you don't know? Usually about half the class has never heard of a French curve. I'll draw it on the board here, so if you don't know what it is, then you will know. This is a French curve right here. Some of you might have one of these French curves. Some of you have a plastic tool called a fashion ruler. Fashion ruler has a circle on this end here. Ends right here. See, that's a little bit better than the French curve. You see why? It completes a circle here. It's longer down through here, and this is in plastic. French curve fashion ruler. Just like when cooking in the kitchen, is there certain tools you need to do things right? Same thing working on a pattern. And it doesn't matter whether you make patterns for your own measurement, whether you try to adjust the commercial pattern, you should have some kind of tools to work with. These are some of the tools, well, they're helpful. French curve fashion ruler. Now, the tools that we use in these classes, they're shaped a little bit differently than the tools we've explained. The tool that we use for above the waist is what we call our designer's curve. Now, if you notice, there's a little bit of difference. What's the difference? This has two circles on it, doesn't it? Why in the world have two circles? One to talk in, one to hear out of. Looks like a phone, doesn't it? How many of you in here knew that the armhole on your pattern is different front and back? How many of you knew that? Of course, if the sleeve cap's different, right? So you see what the difference is between our designer's curve, the French curve, and the fashion ruler tool? Notice ours has always had the front. See, here's the front, and here's the back armholes on it. A lot of difference in the curvature from here to there in the front and back armhole. What it amounts to is all the lines from the waist up. This is the tool we've used to make the lines. We use it to make all the armholes front and back, all the sleeve caps front and back, all the collars, all the necklines. What is it for? It's for pattern making and designing, like we showed in the first part of the class. You know what else you can use this for? Adjusting a commercial pattern. Can also be used for marking, making, alteration on clothing. In other words, the tool can be used on any kind of pattern or garment, and when we make patterns, you'll see what they're for pattern making. Now, the tool that we use for below the waist is shaped altogether differently than that tool. Tool that we use for below the waist is what we call tailor's curve. Now, these tools, they were first made available to sewing public through these classes in 1976 and 1977. This one was originally designed in one piece. It was an inch long in the center. It was all hooked together. It looked just like that. You know what happened when these tools were taken to stores to see if they carried them for you? You know what they said about them? Especially this thing here. What do you think it said about that? Yeah, first of all, that's too long. We don't allow that much space for sewing on them. You know what they said about these? We already have some of those French curves, or already have that fashion curve with the one circle. You'll find numerous different shaped tools or curves that are supposed to be used for patterns. The designer's curve and the tailor's curve, they've been kept exclusively in these classes for people that have attended. This is self-explanatory. That's your hip curve. This is your outside leg on slack skirts, bottoms, and dresses. This is the crotch curve on pants. This is the inside leg. This is the upper inseam. This is for everything below the waist, slack skirts, bottoms, and dresses. We also use this in tailoring when we draw two-piece suit sleeves. We use it in drawing lapels and coats and jackets because it's long enough. What is it for? It's for pattern making and designing, like we show you in the first two parts of class. You know what else you can use this for? Adjusting a commercial pattern. Can also be used for marking, making, alteration on clothing. In other words, the tools, again, can be used on any kind of pattern or garment. And when we make patterns, you'll see what they're for pattern making. You see the words and numbers that are printed on this tool? These words and numbers are not for pattern making with that system. What are the words and numbers on there for if they're not for pattern making? Oh, yeah. What else are they for? Adjusting what? Whose pattern? Yeah, what the words are for is it tells you where to use the tool on a commercial made pattern. What the numbers are for reference points when adjusting a commercial made pattern. You understand how you would have to learn how to use these tools when adjusting commercial pattern? We can't teach you how to use these on a commercial pattern. How do you think you have to learn how to use the tool on a commercial pattern? On your own by actually what? Yeah, on your own by actually doing it, practicing in trial and error. Once you learn how, it'll be just like your favorite knife in the kitchen. But it's something you really have to learn on your own by actually doing it. When we make patterns, though, you'll see what they're for pattern making. Then I'll use them with pattern designing in the second part of the class. Now we're going to play connect the dots. On the front of the pattern between a 19 and 20, isn't it a straight line? Between 19 and 20? It's straight on a little pattern, isn't it? Okay. Some of the lines you need a yardstick on. Some of what lines? Some of the center, front, or backs, because this straight edge isn't quite long enough for some of the lines. How about between 20 and 21? That's straight, isn't it? Okay. How about across the bottom of the pattern? That's straight too, isn't it? Anybody can make the straight line. How about between 18 and 26? That's straight between the 2 points. Side seam between 2 points is also straight. Now those are all straight lines, aren't they? Now we come to the important parts of pattern. How about that neckline and armhole? Those are important, aren't they? Don't you want those to fit and look right? Well, sure. When you're working with your neckline or your armhole, is one time you have to follow one little rule. Always work from the top of your pattern down. Always line up the top 3 dots on the edge of the tool. Always the top 3. Neckline only has 1, 2, 3. Now look. The first dot's on the edge and the last dot's on the edge, but the second one's way off there, isn't it? So to make a perfect neckline, just slide it till the top 3 dots line up along the edge. See, right there they are. See, our designer's tool will protect you from making mistakes, because it won't go here. Won't go here, won't go here. See how it fits right in? Boom, makes your perfect neckline. You'll see that when we put it on. How about that armhole? That has 4 dots. What's the little rule? Always the top what? Always the top 3. I'm working on the front armhole, right? So I'd have to use the front arm half. Back arm half, that must be the front arm half. Always the top 3 dots. See? 1, 2, 3. That's the most important part of the armhole, right through there. What's that part of your pattern left under there? What's that called? It's called underarm, isn't it? See where that says underarm from here to there? Guess what that part of the tool's for? From here to there. That's for the front underarm. That's so you can keep the same continuous curve, loop the underarm dots together like so. See how to make your perfect armhole? You'll see that when we put it on. Now, if you're working on the back, of course, you have to use the back underarm because it's a totally different curve there, isn't there? So you see what the problem has been with that French curve and that fashion ruler tool? One of the problems that we found after working with all 3, none of the other tools have a proper front armhole to work with. Fashion curve at least has a circle on, but you know what? That does not match on either end of our designer's curve. See, those curves are not deep enough anywhere to make the armhole properly. Doesn't match on the back end either. Another problem with those other tools is unless you've been properly trained to move them around, they very simply will not make the shapes on the pattern as nice as they should be in a lot of areas, especially through here. Right through here, and back through here, and they aren't long enough for pants, but it was better than trying to do this freehand or with a peanut butter jar or something like that. See, fine sewers aren't born and they aren't made either. First of all, the finest sewers are equipped. Equipped with what? Equipped with the proper tools. I can get the same results with the French curve tool as you can with this thing here. What? I can get the same results with the French curve tool as you can with this thing here. Because we spent years of pattern making school learning how to move those things around and make that curve right. You know what this very simply does? It protects people that aren't trained to use a French curve from making what? Making a mistake. In other words, it has the right curves on it to start with, so you don't have to know anything about moving it. Besides that, it saves a lot of time. See, French curves are draftsman's tools, which were designed by engineers to be used by engineers for drafting and mechanical drawing. The designer's curve was developed by pattern experts and designers to be used on patterns. But if you do know how to move those around, you can. It just takes a lot longer. Cross shoulder top one side, that's straight, isn't it? Okay. How about on the other side? Isn't that straight? Now the one for the dart has that point on there though, doesn't it? So we'll put the little point on there. Now it's in material how big or small you make this point. You understand the only reason for that? So when you fold your dart in, there's no dip in there, so you sew it across, your sewing machine catches that portion of the dart. That's the only reason for that. To do it right, measure the distance, this dot to this one, split that, that's about where the center should be. See the 11 if you'd forgotten all about it? What would happen if you forgot to mark the 11? Yeah, you wouldn't have any point to line your dart in. And when you fit your pattern on your shoulder would be way too big. See, now what you do is you take a close look at the pattern. Don't leave anything out. Put the dart in. Isn't a dart made? There's a dart made, isn't it? How about the center front? That starts from the second dot in the neckline, doesn't it? Put the center front in. How do you draw the center front straight down? Well, from the second dot in the neckline, I have a grid here. I make sure the front line on the pattern's on the same grid line up top here as it is down at the bottom here. Then we draw it straight down. See this grid in here? I make sure the front line on the pattern's on the same grid line up top here as it is down at the bottom here. Then we draw it straight down. How about those buttons? I'll put them on and make it look good. First one goes across your full part. Sometimes you have square buttons. You understand I just stuck those on there, those buttons? Okay. You want to know how to accurately space buttons or properly place a button? Right there. Right there. What does it do? What does it do? It's for exact placement of buttons. Buttonholes. Shirring, smocking, skirt pleats, drapery pleats, placements for hooks, eyes, and snaps. You can use it as a knitting gauge. Professional bakers use these things to score to decorate their cakes evenly. You, husband or boyfriend, can use a machine shop. What does it do? It's called a Simflex expanding spacer. It accurately spaces lengthwise or widthwise. How many has never seen the expanding space tool? A couple of you. See, none of the tools of the trade are any good unless somebody shows them to you, gives you an idea what they're for. Isn't that neat? 72 years it's been around. What? 72 years it's been around. I had a lady the other day, I thought you're going to teach us about all the newest tools. I said, what are you talking about? Well, she says it right there, it says it in that ad, right there it is, newest tools. Well, put it this way. If you've never seen it before, it's new to you, isn't it? I like that. I'll pass it around so you can play with it. It's for any kind of measuring, not just sewing measuring. Now, what's the arrow on the pattern for? The arrow? Yeah, that's for the straightened material. Center, front, or back is on straight in most cases. Unless the arrow's slanted. What if the arrow's slanted? It means to be cut on the bias. See this straight edge here? See that slot that's cut out of the middle there? Guess what we use that slot for? So you can mark the straight. You can also put your tracing wheel in tracing, things like that. This is parallel with this is parallel with this. When you cut the whole pattern out, the center front line's on the straight. Now you see the bottom shaded in portion, or bottom shadowed in portion? That's a fitting dart. That's an optional dart. You don't want to forget it's there if you want it, so we just write there dart. You can wear the waistcoat fitted and see that seam sewn in there, or you can leave that hang loose like a coat. That's an optional dart. The middle of the fitting dart is again parallel with the straight grain if you're going to be sewing that dart in, and we'll explain how to sew fitting darts in later when we fit the pattern onto Desi. See the broken line on the pattern, the dotted line? Remember that's the waist? If you want to draw the waist on the pattern, how are you going to do it? It starts at 18 at the side seam here, but there's no point in the front to connect it. If you eye it, it might come up crooked like that or like that. It's parallel the bottom. We measure from 26 to 18. See how far that is from here to there? From here to there? Then we come up from the 21, the same amount. Make a little dot. That's how you draw the waist if you want to draw it on there. See how it's parallel to the bottom? Here to there and here to there. Now you see those little tiny letter A's at the bottom of the armholes. Those are your sewing instructions. See, the pattern sews together according to the alphabet. A is sewed to A before B is sewed to B, C to C, D to D, in other words, so everybody knows ABCs. You've got the basic sewing instruction. Now when you have a little design pinned down, you have to punch a hole in the cross in order to make the pattern. As soon as you take your little pattern off, you have to have a hole on your big pattern. Wherever that hole is on your big pattern, you want to mark it somehow. We just solved the short and long waist problem. What? We just solved the short and long waist problem. When you have a little design pinned down, you'd have to punch a hole in the cross to make the pattern. As soon as you take your little pattern off, you have to have a hole on your big pattern. Wherever that hole is, you mark it, because that's how you would lengthen and shorten these patterns. And I'll explain that again further in a little while. Didn't you punch a hole in the cross on the miniature? What I always like to do after I make a pattern, I like to put a piece of clear Scotch tape right over the hole, right over the X. That way the hole on a little tiny design, it doesn't get any bigger. You understand, if you ruin this little guide, you're out of business. That way you'd have patterns forever. You know, I'm assuming you'd use this. You know, you'd never have to buy or purchase another pattern. Your children would have patterns forever. Your grandchildren are going to have patterns forever. You understand what we mean by that? We can make the same pattern for grandchildren 52 years from now, providing this paper's still good, and it will be. Oh, one of our senior instructors, she calls this system an heirloom. What's an heirloom? It's something you pass down, isn't it? I never thought about it that way. Anyway, besides all that, notice the pattern does not have any seam allowance. It does not have any seam allowance. You have to add the seam allowance. How are you going to do that? Well, any way you want to do that is up to you. Fastest, easiest, most accurate way to do that is I like to use this rotary cutting tool with the little seam allowance guide on it. Listen carefully. Cut your pattern out along the seam line, which is the solid line. Lay your pattern right on the fabric. You understand your pattern's laid on fabric? Release the safety latch off the blade. After you release the safety latch off the blade, how much seam allowance you want? 1/4 of an inch is all that's necessary. Pattern company gives you 5/8, and they tell you to cut it off in places anyway. How much you want, a half? However amount of seam allowance you like to use, that's up to you. Let's say you want a 1/2 inch. Pull the guide arm a 1/2 inch away from the blade and tighten it up. You understand your pattern's laid on fabric. You understand the purpose for the guide arm. So you can follow right along the seam line. There's the seam line, cutting out the fabric right away. You understand we're cutting out fabric? This thing is razor sharp. It'll cut 10 thicknesses of denim with a little pressure on it. You can use the tool to add seam allowance on any kind of pattern. Even when you get done adjusting commercial patterns, seam allowance is all messed up sometimes, isn't it? Or some have used a type of commercial pattern doesn't come with a seam allowance to begin with. You can use this to cut bias strips. You can use it for any type of crafts or quilting. Forget that guide arm for the time being. You know how much more accurate this is than a pair of scissors? See, whenever you cut with scissors, usually you cut 2 pieces at once. You know what happens to your bottom piece? Your scissors are pushing the bottom piece. See, it's called push, cut, push, cut, push, cut. You really can't get an accurate cut as you could or should like you can with a tool like this. Once you become familiar with using this tool, you'll find yourself using it a lot of places instead of scissors. Now, I didn't want to press too hard because they're going to make a hole in my board. There is special cutting mats that must be used with these things. Why must the special cutting mat be used? Well, the real reason is in order to get the rotary cutter to work properly is the real reason, and there's several companies that make the cutting mats. We've been through 7 different ones already since the tool's been out. The problem with all the other ones we've tried is a lot of them say they're self-healing, and they really aren't. A lot of them don't have the proper surface on them in order to get this to cut right. Some surfaces are much too hard or much too soft, and this skips when it cuts. A lot of cutting mats dull the blades right away, and eventually you have to replace all the other cutting mats. The only proper cutting mat we've found to use, we've tried every one of them, is the same people that make the cutter, and that's the Oleyar cutting mat. How many of you have an Oleyar cutting mat? A couple of you do? There's all different sizes, these Oleyar cutting mats. This happens to be the largest one they make at this time. Another reason why you have to use the Oleyar cutting mat is the material that the mat's made with. which is a very high density plastic which has to be special molded with a name about that long. When you lay your fabric down, it won't do it on paper, but it will do it on fabric. When you lay your fabric down, when you cut, you get a nice straight cut. It keeps silk from slipping around and everything else. If you cut in a big, several thicknesses of fabric, I like to lay my tool on top to keep it from slipping around. Doesn't cause the blade to dull, and you never ever have to replace the Oleyar cutting mat. Why do you think we tried all those other cutting mats over the years? Yeah, because they are not giving these things away. They are not giving these things away. 5 years ago, the suggested retail price of the Oleyar cutting mat was only $30. Now the suggested retail price is $41.50. That's a suggested retail. Usually the stores add a couple more dollars onto that. They're usually $44.95 to $49.95. That's just for the mat. That's why we've tried all the others. But you know what? By the time you buy 2 of the others, you may as well have the right one. Don't leave this in the heat of your car or the sunlight, because it will ruin it. Now, you will find a cutting tool that looks like this, except it does have a bigger blade on it. It's not any sharper. It just cuts more thickness of fabric. Problem with it, doesn't have a little post with a little seam allowance guide. There's also one that's exactly the same size, this size here. As you can see, the problem with it doesn't have a little post with a little seam allowance guide. See, this company was very smart. They put the other 2 out first without the guide arm. Then they waited 7 years till everybody bought the ones without the guide arm. Then they put the one with the guide arm in it, so you'd have to get this one too. They used to charge around $10 for the cutting tool without the guide arm in it, and then they built the guide arm in it and called it new and charged $12 for the new one. What comes after new? Improved. And the only thing it improves is the price. Now what they do is, instead of building the guide arm into the cutter, they just took all the old ones and punched holes in them. Raised the price $1.11 because it's been improved. It's got a hole punched in there. They no longer build the guide arm into the cutter. They just put the guide arm in another package and charge $5 for the guide arm. See, now they get $16 for the improved one as opposed to $12 for the new one. You understand? All I did was separate that thing and charge you for both pieces a la carte. Smart marketing is what that is. You can use this in place of scissors anywhere. You can use it to cut leather, vinyl, film, plastic. What do we use the tool for in the pattern class? We use it to cut the fabric out right away, adding seam allowance. Hottest cutting tool in the country. Has been since it came out. Everybody understand how we've gotten this far? Does everybody understand you have to add the seam allowance however you want to do that? Okay, good. Now I'm going to explain why the pattern fits as opposed to standard size pattern without getting too confusing. It's very simple why this works. Size 12 commercial pattern is made to what bust measurement? 34, right? Size 14 commercial pattern is made to what bust measurement? Yeah, that's made to 36, isn't it? So if you subtract 34 from 36, how many does that leave? That leaves 2, doesn't it? What does that 2 mean? Well, let's tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean that the size 14 pattern is 2 inches bigger all the way around than the 12. It doesn't mean that at all. What it does mean is the difference between the 12 and 14 is 2 inches. In other words, there's 2 inches there that there's no patterns being made for. Did you know the difference between the half-size pattern is even a greater distance? Did you know that there's 2.5 inches difference between a half-size pattern? Doesn't mean the next one's 2.5 inches bigger. That means that there's 2.5 inches there that there's no patterns being made for. How many eighths are in 1 inch? Yeah, even all the new math, there's still 8 of them, isn't there? How many eighths would be in 2 inches? 16, right? Does everybody agree that there's 16 eighths within 2 inches? Everybody agree upon that? Okay, good. Now look up here. See the holes in the scale? The holes in the scale, they're 1/8 of an inch apart from one hole to the next. So you understand what I just told you? Between 2 inches of the scale, how many patterns can I make between 2 inches? 16. You understand I can make 16 different patterns within this 2-inch range? Sorry, but you can't get a more accurate pattern than what we're showing you here today. Patterns don't come any more accurate than that. Your pattern's in there somewhere, you just have to find it. You know, you could really be 8 or 10 holes off in this scale, off your correct measurement, and this pattern would still fit, as opposed to standard size pattern. You can do something wrong and you have to come up with better results. You understand I have 16 patterns within 2 inches? Lady asked me the other day, why don't they make my commercial pattern that accurate? I'm paying enough money for them. They could grade 16 patterns within 2 inches, but why don't they? Yeah, it's the bottom line, isn't it? What's the bottom line?
Money.
Well, they wouldn't make as much money as the real reason. And besides that, they don't have to make the pattern that accurate. Why don't they have to make your pattern that accurate?
Seller's market.
Why? Because you're going to buy them anyway? Why do you buy them anyway? Because there isn't anything else. So you understand why they're not making 16 patterns within 2 inches? It's the bottom line is they wouldn't make as much money is the real reason. And besides that, they know you're going to buy the pattern anyway. How do they know that? Because there isn't anything else. So you understand why you have to come up with better results even if you did something wrong? There was a lady one day said, it must be magic why that pattern fits. I've been sewing for 70 years and I've never seen a pattern fit like that. Magic? There's nothing magic about it. It's mathematically done. You have more patterns is why it works. You understand I've got 16 patterns within the 2 inch range. Okay, come on up here, Odessa. We'll put on and see what it looks like. Okay, you can stand right about there. Face the people. Remember we said the shoulder would be, scoot over a little bit. That's good. This way a little. Remember we said the shoulder would be a little bigger, the armhole drop down into there? Did I measure the width of Desi's shoulder, neckline, armhole? No, it isn't necessary. Necessary would have to go showing you how to do all that. Turn this way just a little bit. Okay, let's look straight ahead. Put your 2 fingers right there. Up a little further. Over a little further. Press tight. That's good. Neckline fit nice? Doesn't gap open and go on. Did I measure neckline? Yeah. Not necessary. How about that dart? Is that pointing right to full part like it's supposed to? Did I measure from here to there? No, and I grant you, if your bus is down here, I don't know how it's gotten down there. That's an extreme problem. Let's just say it is. All you would do is you'd mark your fullest part, you draw a little longer or shorter if you have to. It'd be pretty close to where it's supposed to be, no less you have extreme high or low bust. More important than that, turn aside. How about the width of the shoulder? Is it fitting like a jacket's supposed to? Didn't I say it should be a little bigger but not too much? Fits exactly how I explained it would, doesn't it? Okay, more important than that, put your arm up. See how nice the armhole fits down? See how it drops way down into there? Now it looks real good on her because she has a bulky sleeve on. How'd you like to have slacks fit like that? Does that pattern fit or doesn't it? Does that pattern fit or doesn't it? Guess what? They always do. I'd say the waist is a good 2 inches too long. Other than length, the waist pattern fit or doesn't it? Slacks will fit just as nice. Okay, thank you, Desi. You can have a seat. Now listen carefully. It's no mistake that the pattern fit that nice. It's mathematically done. Remember math class when we were in school? There was only 2 answers, wasn't there? What were those 2 answers? Mine and the teacher's. That's always happened to me anyway. Okay. In 1969, they sent that man to the moon, didn't they? How'd they figure out how to do that? Mathematical formula? Isn't how they figured all that out? Think the mathematician can figure out how to make a pattern that fits halfway decent? We've just shown you. It's really no big thing. You know how long they've been using this made-to-measure dress pattern method? This method has been used in Europe and the Orient for decades already. You know the Hong Kong tailors have been making patterns custom fit to measurements like this since they've been in business? See, by measuring around you, it doesn't matter who you are, unless you're born with deformity or had some kind of operation, and we can solve the individual figure type problem most of the time by grading the pattern to a different measurement in the scale in that particular area. What we mean by that is I had a lady come to class one day, what about me? My arm on this side is much bigger than one on the other side because I had operation. I still have to cut and adjust on this pattern, don't I? You know what I told her? No, you don't. All you have to do is make 2 sides. When you make your armhole and sleeve cap on this side, just make it to a bigger number in the scale than the rest of the pattern. So even if you do have a figure type problem, we can solve it most of the time by grading the pattern to a different measurement in the scale in that particular area, so don't worry about that. See, by measuring around you, we can mathematically project the width of the shoulder, neckline, armhole to fit like a waist jacket's supposed to. How can we mathematically do that? Haven't we explained all already? It's very simple why it works. We grade the patterns to within 1/8 of an inch of the proportions of the human body in each area. Now, we don't know how tall or how short you are by taking the measurement around. Some of you might have a short and long waist, and length is up to you in any case. You would adjust the length on the pattern to suit your individual tastes or to keep up with the current trend. In other words, you make your pattern as long or short as you want to for style, or as long or short as you have to. You don't like to make a sleeve longer or shorter, to make the slack or skirt longer or shorter, or to solve short and long waist. Now, in the first pattern we tried on, we found out the waist was a couple inches too long for Desi, didn't we? Notice I wrote that down? Because every pattern she makes from now on, the waist will be 2 inches too long for her. So do you see what this number still saves everybody from doing? What does the number save you from doing? It saves you from having to fit yourself over and over and over and over as you now have to do. Each time you buy a new commercial pattern, don't you usually have to fit that particular one and see where it doesn't fit? You know why they all fit differently? There's different pattern graders, the different easel lots that different pattern companies are using in the mass production. What we're telling you is you only have to put this on once, just like we did. Make sure the waist is exactly right and see if you need a lengthen or shorten your pattern in any of those other areas. In other words, you need to check length on the pattern. You only need to do it once. So in the long run, when you go to make your dress pattern, if you don't have to spend the time to fit it each time, like you now have to do when you want to make a garment, do you think that would leave more time for actual sewing the garment together? I think it would. A lot of people come to these classes and say, well, I don't have time to sew. You know, whether you realize it or not, a lot of your time for a lot of it is really not spent sewing. You know where a lot of that time spent for a lot of the people? Yeah, it's trying to get the pattern to fit. Putting them on, taking them off, making an adjustment. Putting them on, taking them off, making an adjustment. Cutting, adjusting, slashing, spreading, taping, fitting them back on. What happens when you get all through doing all that? It still fits like a sock on a rooster sometimes, doesn't it? Or it doesn't fit as well as some of you'd like it to for all the time. You know what's much more important in your time? It's the aggravation that some people are spending. Sewing is supposed to be fun. Stop and think about when you had fun last time you were sewing. Stop and think about it. How can it be fun when you get all done and it doesn't fit right? If it fits, it's worth $8 million. If it doesn't fit, it isn't worth a quarter. How do you take care of that short and long waist? We solved that a long time ago. Remember earlier when we were making the pattern? We have the little design pinned down. We have to punch a hole in the cross in order to make the pattern. As soon as you take the little pattern off, you have to have that hole on your big pattern. Remember we told you to mark it? Before you lay the pattern on the fabric, very simply cut the pattern in half across the hole. Spread it apart to lower the waist or lengthen the pattern. Overlap it to shorten the waist or shorten the pattern. Doesn't that drop the natural waist right place or lengthen and shorten your pattern? And when you lay the pattern on the fabric, you don't forget to remember, somehow you have to remember to add the what? Seam allowance, however you want to do that. What we're telling you is all the lengthening or shortening you need to do is done from the middle of the X. Now there is no X on the big pattern, but when you have your little design pinned down, you have to punch a hole in the cross to make the pattern. As soon as you take the little pattern off, you have to have a hole on your big pattern. Wherever that hole is, you mark it. Because that's how you lengthen and shorten the pattern. You know, like to make a sleeve longer or shorter, to make the slack or skirt longer or shorter, or to solve short and long waist. Now to make your pattern longer or shorter for style, you do it different. Didn't you make a bunch of dots on the blank sheet of paper? You can make the pattern as long as you want to by moving the dots down further than lining them in. You can make them as wide or as narrow as you want to. You want a wider or narrow lapel, you move the dots in or out. How about that fitting dart? I didn't say much about that. If you want to wear the waistcoat fitted, if you want to see the seam sewn in here, the main thing is when you crease this waist dart, you crease it directly in line with the shoulder dart, parallel with the grain if you're going to sew that dart in. How do you sew in a fitting dart? After your side seams are sewn together, you taper it from nothing to nothing. In other words, you pull the bulk of it out at the waist. You mark that much off with your chalk and sew it in. You can wear this as tight as you want here. The idea is if your pattern fits as nice as these will fit, you can pull this up as tight as you want here, and we showed you, you can still move around it, will still look good up through here. What if you sew a 2-inch fitting dart in the first pattern, you like how it fits? What do you do with all these patterns have a fitting dart? You sew a 2-inch fitting dart. You understand why it fits the same as the first one? We use the same formulas to make each one of these little designs. We've used the same formula for decades. See, when you have something that's this fantastic that works all over the world, see, this system works all over the world. Of course, you never change it. How about a facing? Most of the time we supplied you with a facing. If the pattern doesn't have, if the abbreviation ST on your dress pattern there is a facing, if the pattern doesn't have a facing, you just very simply cut your facing right off your same pattern. See, all a facing is an extension of the outline of your pattern. If you don't want to ruin your pattern by cutting it up, see, patterns are not that sacred when you can make your own from the miniature. Doesn't take you 5 minutes to make another one of these once you practice. If you don't want to ruin your pattern, you can draw your facing off your pattern. You know what we mean by that? Lay this on a blank sheet of paper. Trace this outline. How much facing you want? 2, 4 inches, whatever. Shove it over. Trace it again. Cut that away. Push out your perfectly matched facing. How about a lining? Because, oh, what's another way you can cut your facing? Yeah, the other way is to use the cutter and guide arm to cut your facing, you follow? How about a lining? Because you probably want to line this. How would you make your lining? From your same pattern. Lining's the same size except for in the back. You need at least a 2-inch accordion pleat in the back so you can move. Suppose you make a pattern, it comes up too big or too small. Now what do? Well, don't try to remeasure. Easiest thing we can tell you to do is if you make a pattern to 1/16 and it's too big, move your tack down a few holes. You understand a smaller number, make a smaller pattern. Too small at 1/16, move your tack up a few holes. You understand a bigger number, make a bigger pattern. Happens when you gain weight, where's tack go? Happens when you lose weight, where's it go? Oh, we have an even better than that. How about little children or grandchildren? How many of you sew for them? A couple of you do. As they're getting bigger, what happens to your pocketbooks? They get smaller, don't they? Because as they get bigger, you keep having to buy what? Yeah, more patterns, more money for more patterns. You don't realize the money you're spending or the money you're going to continue to spend. Because see, now you do it a little bit at a time. What changes with this when little children change? You don't have to get $5, $6, or $7 out for another pattern that's going to fit. What changes with this when they change? Where the tack goes in the what? Yeah, where the tack goes in the scale. I guarantee you, this is the easiest and fastest way that you'll ever see on how to get a pattern to fit halfway decent without having to go to a special pattern making school, spend your time to go to pattern making school, and thousands of dollars that pattern making courses cost. So unless there's any questions on how to make pattern using the miniatures, we're done with the first part of the class of pattern making, so you can put these leaflets away. The second part of the class has to do with pattern designing. Now, the whole key of this designing is if you have a pattern that fits nice, you can do this. If you make it to your own measurement, it has to fit, providing that you didn't do something drastically wrong. And we told you what to do even if you did. What do we say to do with that tack? Yeah, you move your tack up or down in the scale. Another thing I want to explain is there is no such thing as a new style. What? There is no new styles. You've heard if you keep your clothes long enough, they'll come back in style?
Believe me, I have some.
So, yes, you know how true that really is? Clothing manufacturer, pattern maker, tailors, designers, there's only certain basic patterns that we use to create any known style. Every garment you'll ever wear or ever will wear consists of the same basic pattern. See, in the garment industry, we have a private collection. A private collection of what? Of master patterns that we use to create any known style. In garment factory, we have two bodice. What kind of bodice are there? Well, if you look around, most bodice are set in sleeve. Bodice either have sleeves on them or they don't. Two bodice, sleeved and sleeveless. There's only two basic dress patterns. What kind of dresses are there besides the long and the short? Dresses with waistlines and dresses without waistlines, sheath and shift. Two bodice, sleeves and no sleeves. Two dresses, waist and no waist. There's only 7 sleeves. Really, there's only 2 sleeves. One that's set into the armhole like this one, and one that's part and attached to the bodice, like the raglan, dolman, kimono sleeves. Starting to get the idea? There's 9 skirts, 32 necklines, and 36 basic colors. That's all. That's not very many patterns, is it? 2 bodice, 2 dress, 7 sleeve, 9 skirt, 32 necklines, 36 colors. Actually, is even less than that. That whole collection we make from 5 pattern pieces. See, we only have 5 patterns to make everything from. How in the world are all the styles and designs created as you like to look at in a store and in a magazine? What's done with the 2 bodice, 2 dress, 7 sleeve, 9 skirt, 32 necklines, 36 collars? Yeah, they're just all mixed and matched around. If you mixed and matched the 2 bodice, 2 dress, 7 sleeve, 9 skirt, 32 necklines, 36 colors, how many combinations do you think you can come up with? 438,917. That's without doing any designing. We're going to show you. All it's done is the pieces are all mixed around. We also use different darts. We have 3 basic darts. We have a shoulder dart, like is in the waistcoat. We have a side dart, which is a more popular dart. You see more often side dart. We have a dart from below the waist, which is a French dart. We use different seam, different yoke effects. All a yoke is a seam. Selection of fabric. There's all different kinds of cloth. You know what most of the designing is? Most of the designing is just a different what? Yeah, different cloth and color. Different accessories like buttons and lace, raise and lower your hemlines, widen or narrow things like lapels on jackets, flare or narrow things like your pants. Then the cost is raised on it, and it's called a new style. Now, if you have the system we've shown you in your possession, it contains every basic pattern in miniature form like we use in the garment industry. So you can make a custom fit pattern for your own measurements like I've done this waistcoat. You would be able to duplicate any garments you've ever seen, any style, any fashion. Of course, using these basic shapes of patterns, following a few rules in designing we'll have to show you. First rule of dress designing we use is what we call redesigning a bust dart. Let's say that Desi doesn't like the shoulder dart. Maybe she likes a dart from neckline that's a neckline dart. From the armholes an English dart, just like below the waist, French dart. Side dart's a more popular dart you see more often, side dart. This is how to redesign a bust dart. Lay your pattern flat, draw on your new design anywhere from the waist, anywhere from the side, anywhere from the armhole, anywhere from neckline. As long as you draw it back to the dart you don't want. One lady says, well, how did you know to start that here? How come you didn't start it here or there? You can start anywhere from the neckline, anywhere from the armhole, anywhere from the side, anywhere from below the waist. As long as you draw it back to the dart you don't want. You follow this? Now you don't want the shoulder dart anymore, do you? So what do? Yeah, you tape it shut. Now when you tape the shoulder dart shut, what's going to happen to your pattern? Yeah, you have a big bubble in your pattern, don't you? Don't you have a big bubble there? So you see what a dart's for? All a dart's for is what we call a shaping tool. Just like tucks, pleats, and gathers, it puts shape to your pattern of your garment. Then you take your scissors and cut right along that line you drew in there. Doesn't matter where you draw the line, wherever looks best on you. Right to the tip. Now what kind of dart do you have? Sure don't have a shoulder dart anymore, do you? You have a what? You have a side dart. See how it just went from here to there? Cut the cloth as the pattern lays, you mark your new dart. When you bring it back together, it goes back the exact way it came for, except now the dart comes in from where? Comes in from the side. Does everybody understand how to redesign the bust dart? That's easy, isn't it? We just saved you $5. I'll pass this basket around to make the collections. Have some in there already. Because if you wanted a waistcoat with a side dart, before we showed you how to do that, where would we find you? Yeah, right at the pattern store, buying another pattern. Lady asked one day, why hasn't Commercial Pattern Company ever showed me how to redesign my bust dart before? Well, that's silly. That just cost them a pattern sale. You understand they don't want you to know any of these things about designing? You understand why they don't want you to know that? They're in business to sell you as many patterns as they possibly can. They don't want you to know that. Does everybody understand how to do that? Redesigning a bust dart? That's easy, isn't it? If you understand that, we're going to tell you the best way to sew darts. A lot of sewing books tell you to sew from the side to the point. You know what happens when you sew from the side to the point? Feed dog on your sewing machine. Does everybody know what a feed dog is? We'll explain it further later in the last 45 minutes of the class. Feed dog pushes all the goods out at the end and it shapes the dart at the point. When it's tied off, the big bubble shows up there. You know what that big bubble says? Well, I made that. That's what it says. You understand why that happened? You understand why that happened? Because the easing effect of your feed dog, which we'll explain in the last 45 minutes of the class. The best way to sew your dart would be to set your needle short of the point. Back stitch one time, then sew towards the side. That way your dart will lock stitch to the point, at least get a nice sharp point. Set your needle short of the point. Back stitch one time, then sew towards the side. That way your dart will lock stitch to the point, at least get a nice sharp point. You understand the best way to sew darts? If you do, now we're going to tell you where the dart belongs. We have three basic darts. We have a shoulder dart. It should reach the fullest part of the bust like it did on Desi. We have a side dart which reaches the fullest part of the bust. We also have a French dart. Remember the French dart starts at the waist or below? The French dart reaches the fullest part of your bust also. So you can draw that in straight if you want to. I like to draw it in curved. See, the whole purpose for the dart is to create a cup in your pattern for your bust to go into. I've seen some sewing books tell you to stop your dart 2 inches from the fullest part of your bust. You know what happens if you stop your dart 2 inches from your bust? Now you have two problems. You're over here and the cup's over here. Whoever thinks of those things, I have no idea. The dart belongs to the fullest part of your bust, not 2 inches away. If you get it anywhere near the fullest part, it's in the right place. Everybody understand how to redesign the bust dart? You understand the best way to sew the dart? You understand the dart belongs to the fullest part? There's three basic darts, shoulder, side, and French dart. If you understand that, we're going to tell you another rule of dress designing. Another rule of dress designing we use is what we call superimpose one pattern over the other. You know what superimpose means to do? Take something and lay it on top of the other. You know what a raglan sleeve is, one of these, raglan sleeve. We can put a raglan sleeve on a set-in sleeve bodice. That sounds impossible, doesn't it? It's not. Pin the raglan sleeve down, make a few measurements, set it aside. So we have a miniature design in the system, so you can make a raglan sleeve from it. Make yourself a set-in sleeve bodice, set it aside. Just take your raglan sleeve and lay it on top of the set-in sleeve bodice. See how the sleeve is laid on top of the bodice? Superimpose one pattern over the other. Then you take your scissors and cut right along the line of the raglan sleeve. What did you just cut off? Top half of your set-in sleeve bodice. See, now you have a sleeve and you have a bodice. What do you have to remember to do right there on material? Seam allowance, right, sew back together. See how we have a raglan sleeve and a set-in sleeve bodice? Superimpose one pattern over the other. Another rule of dress designing we use is what we call line drawing. This is how we make a different seam in your pattern of your garment. Let's say you see something at the store, had a curved seam in it like this you want to duplicate. You've seen this style of dress before many, many times. What kind of style of dress is that called? Yeah, it's an empire waistline, isn't it? You know how we make the empire waistline? We take the plain Jane dress pattern, we draw the line in, just like so. Doesn't matter where you draw the line, wherever looks best on you. Then we cut the pattern in half, cross that line. Now you have a pattern piece here, you have one here. What do you have to do here and there? Seam allowance, right? Of course, the top half would be on the fold. Top half's on the fold. That's how we make an empire waistline. Suppose you see something at the store, had a curved seam in it like this you want to duplicate. You've seen that before, haven't you? That'd be a scalloped effect. All you have to do is draw the line in, cut your pattern in half, spread for seam allowance, you have a scalloped effect. You know what a yoke is? All a yoke is a seam. Yokes either go across the bust, right there's a V-shaped yoke, or they don't go across the bust. Right there's the shape of a yoke. There's a lot more rules to pattern designing other than just these few that we've shown you. There's a lot more rules to this pattern designing. How many of you like to know all the rules? A couple of you would? Yeah, but we don't have time during the class to cover all the rules. We covered some of the main ones. It takes minimum 6 months special schooling just to learn the basics of this stuff. For those of you that want to know all that, because some people do, we don't have time to cover it. What our designers have done is we've put together some leaflets called Be Your Own Designer. For those of you that want to know all that, Design leaflet 1 starts off telling you what your figure type is. Remember we discussed that earlier? There's only 3. After you identify your figure type, then we tell you what hairdo looks best on your figure type. Then we go on telling you what styles of patterns are best with your figure type, what lines look best on you, what colors are best with your figure type, how to camouflage problem areas if you need to do that. We'll even tell you what kind of shoes you need to wear. Then some of the woman instructors that we have that use the system, they stop right there and they explain a couple of pages of their experience using the pattern system. What they say, it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And if you have any questions, please write or call us. They have people calling them on the phone and writing them letters. I have no idea why. Automatic dart transfer, we showed you that, didn't we? See, some of these things we've had a chance to cover. Remember I was telling you in the garment industry we use a private collection of master patterns, 2 bodice, 2 dress, 7 sleeve, 9 skirt, 32 necklines, 36 collars. Then we told you there was actually less than that. That whole collection we make from these 5 pattern pieces. Remember we only have 5 patterns that everything comes from? How to create optical illusions. Short and heavy, you might want to look a little taller and thinner. Rules for dart location. We talked a little bit about darts, how to redesign them. Best way to sew the dart, where the dart belongs, the full part, and there's 3 basic darts, shoulder, side, and French dart. This explains what to do with that fitting dart a little better. Remember that fitting dart? Drop shoulder with gather, shoulder gather partial yoke, converting darts to seams. We didn't show you that, but it tells you how to take the side dart and the fitting dart and convert it into a seam so the seam functions as your dart. How to make a princess line out of a basic bodice. Shorter, heavier people look better with a princess line design. Parallel darts. Oh, this technique designing is interesting. This is a technique we use called draping. See, all draping is cutting the pattern pieces and spreading them all equally to add fullness to any particular area. You can drape anywhere. You could drape inside the fitting dart, it adds extra fullness. Drape on the outside seam to add fullness. Drape in the neckline. Draping covers a wide range of pattern designing. There's a straight skirt, there's a semi-A-line. How do you make an A-line skirt? You can't draw it all on one side because it'd be too much against the straight grain. You'd be walking around all your fabric on one side. We make semi-A-line first. Then we cut the pattern and spread it equally, which is again called draping. That's how we create an A-line skirt. Gore skirts, circular skirts, folded in taper pleats with skirts. Here's the draping technique again with a collar. See how it adds extra fullness for your collar? There's all the different shape yokes you can make. We showed you how to make yokes. There's how to identify all the sleeves when you see them. Raglan, dolman, kimono sleeves. Starting to get the idea? Superimpose one pattern over the other. We showed you that. Raglan sleeve with the princess line, raglan sleeve with the drop shoulder, kimono sloper, flat collar. Remember there's 36 collars. Most of them we draw right off your neckline. Rolled collar, see here's the draping technique again with a rolled collar. Mandarin collar, convertible collar, shirt collar. How to get the crotch centered on your commercial pattern. I have no idea how that page got in there. That has nothing to do with designing, but I'm glad it's in there. That's all pants is the crotch. You want to make sure you look at this page 57 when I pass the blue design book around so you can see how to get the crotch centered, because that's the most important correction you can use on your commercial pattern. Some more ideas for pants, easy way to put a band on, how to take all your measurements on a commercial pattern. You don't have to do all this unless you really wanted to. You understand what this is all about? This has nothing to do with that pattern making. What's this all about if it's nothing to do with pattern making? Yeah, it's how to take an existing pattern that's already there, whether it be a pattern you custom made for your own measurement or a commercial pattern, and do all these things to it. I had a lady ask me the other day, does that designing information, that blue book, is that going to work on my commercial patterns you already have at home? Does this designing information work on a commercial pattern? Yeah, it works on anybody's pattern. You know how successful it was, Design Book 1? People that had it kept writing to the office. Do you have more information about that designing? A couple of years later, we've completed 2 more. Design Leaflet 2 is how to make a sloper for a bodice. Who doesn't know what a sloper is? A sloper is a basic pattern. That's easy, isn't it? Drafting a front bodice pattern. This is pattern making from scratch. I call it the long way. It takes about 1.5 hours to 2 hours to draft the basic bodice from scratch like we're showing you here. You can make a basic bodice using the system with the miniatures in 6 minutes. Why does it only take 6 minutes there and in 1.5 hours to 2 hours to do it from scratch? Because that's all pre-computed and figured out. Our mathematicians have already figured out the math work. Pattern making from scratch, guess who has to do all the measuring and figuring? You would have to do all the measuring and figuring. It can be done like this, it just takes a lot longer, you follow? After you've got your sloper for your bodice, then we'll tell you how to take a draping test for fabric, flexibility test, how to make a flat-fitting collar, sailor collar, collars with separate stands, how to make a boat neck, a cowl neck. We'll explain how a commercial pattern is graded. Then you'll understand why it doesn't fit 80% of the people. How to make a bra pattern. You want to make your own bras and lingerie? We'll show you how to do that right from a basic bodice. How to make a half slip, a chemise pattern. How to make the basic sleeve. How to make shoulder pads, jacket pads, coat pads. How to make capes, adding yokes to capes. You need a cape now, don't you? That Batman movie? Don't you need a cape? Okay. There's even costuming in this one. How to make glittering costumes with glue and paint. How to make a crown, a hood. We'll even show you how to make your own Wonder Woman boots if you want to wear something like that. Folding wings, butterfly wings. Some people want to know all this. Design Leaflet 2 is pattern making from scratch for a basic bodice. Not only that, it's all the designing information you need to know for a basic bodice. Can this designing information be used on commercial patterns you already have at home? Yes. Can this designing information be used on a commercial pattern basic bodice? Can it be used on basic bodice that's made out of that system? Say yes. Okay. Or it can be used on the basic bodice you make from scratch. You follow? You understand the designing information is for anybody's basic bodice. Design Leaflet 3 is how to make a sloper for a skirt. Remember, a sloper is a basic pattern? It'll take about an hour to draft a straight skirt from scratch like we're showing you here. You can make a straight skirt from the miniature in 4 minutes. You understand the difference? That's all pre-computed. Here you have to do the measuring and figuring. After you've got your sloper for your skirt, then we'll show you how to draw every style skirt. You understand they all come from the one? Guess what we make from a skirt pattern? That's how we make a slack pattern. Comes right off the skirt. Slacks developed from a skirt sloper. Takes about an hour to draft the slack pattern from scratch like we're showing you here. You can make a slack with the system in 10 or 12 minutes because that's all pre-computed. Pattern making from scratch, you have to do the measuring and figuring. After you've got your sloper for your slacks, then we'll show you how to draw every style slack. You understand they all come from the one? So Design Leaflet 3 is pattern making from scratch for skirts and slacks. Not only that, it's all the designing information you need to know for skirts and slacks. Can this designing information be used on patterns that are made out of that system? Yes. Can the designing information be used on commercial patterns? Yes. You understand the designing information is for anybody's pattern? Okay, you don't have to do this unless you really want to. Some people want to know all that. Make sure you look at page 57 in the blue design book when I pass it around so you can see how to get the crotch centered, because that's the most important correction you can use on your commercial pattern. It's also in the green one somewhere if you miss it in there. Anyway, none of that stuff's really done till later. Remember, the first thing we do to create the styles and designs is we mix all the patterns around to create the new styles and designs. What number do we use to make a collar? What number we use to make the collar? 116, right? What number we use to make a neckline? You think the collar is going to match the neckline? Has to. It's made with the same measurement. You know what another thing nice about making patterns for your own measurements? The pattern pieces will match for sewing properly like they're supposed to. Whether you realize it or not, when you buy a commercial pattern, those pattern pieces do not match properly for sewing. Sleeve doesn't match the armhole properly. Collar does not match the neckline. And we'll be explaining that in the last 45 minutes of the class. For those of you that want to do all that, we'll show you how to make them match. See, it's a lot easier to sew if you have patterns that fit you and pieces that match each other properly for sewing. What numbers does Elsa use to make her sleeve? 116, right? What numbers she used to make her armhole? You think the sleeve's going to match the armhole? Has to. It's made with the same measurement. So you see how the patterns are all made to be interchanged because they're all made with the same measurement? You know what's even better than that? They're custom made to fit your own measurement. You know what custom made patterns will cost you? You know what one custom-made pattern cost? They start at $150. That's just for the pattern. That's just for the pattern. Yet everybody in here? Everybody in here can do it themselves. I had a lady ask me one day, she says, well, wait a minute, I don't have enough imagination to be my own designer and create these styles and designs and mix all these patterns around. I don't have enough imagination to do all this designing. Well, you don't need imagination. What's the first thing you need to be your own designer? To create any known style, what do we use? What do we use? Didn't we teach you about that already? To make any known style in the garment industry, what do we use? Yeah, we use a collection of master patterns. So what's the first thing you need to be your own designer? No, the first thing you need. Yeah, the first thing you need is that collection of master patterns we've taught you about. Second thing you need is a pen. Third thing is a little notepad. Even if you don't think you have enough imagination to go mixing all the patterns around like we're trying to tell you, you know where you go to get the ideas? Where would you go to get the ideas? Yeah, you go to the store and look around. Don't a lot of you do that already? Oh, I like that outfit over there. What's the first thing you look at when you get over there? Price tag on it, right? Here it is. $182.50. Hey, Martha, come here and look at this dress. Is that $18.50 or is that printed wrong? Isn't that what happens when you go shopping for clothes? And they aren't going down any, are they? Are they going down around here? I don't think so. You understand why you go to stores. Isn't the outfit already designed for you? It's all put together for you, isn't it? What we're telling you is there is no new styles. See, to be your own designer is really very simple, because all you're doing is copying what's already there. When you find the outfit you like, all you have to do is look at it as pieces and make a sketch of it. Let's see, what kind of collar does it have? How many colors is in the collection? Remember, there's only 36. It has to be one of those. That's all there is. What kind of bodice is it? That's easy. There's only two. Sleeved or sleeveless. What kind of sleeve is it? Is it set into the armhole like this one? Or is it part and attached to the bodice, like the raglan, dolman, kimono sleeve? Starting to get the idea? What kind of skirt's that? There's only 9. After you have a sketch of the basic shapes of the patterns you need, then you'd come to the system, you try to find them. Now, that's something I can't help you with. You have to go through 15,984 miniature designs to find a miniature to make a raglan sleeve. Yeah, that's the way you'd have to do it. We found that the easiest way that people do is they start right from the first page. You can make these models as you see them, although there's no styles and designs intended in mine at all. You know what these models display? The basic shapes of every pattern. This is model 1. You might like the whole thing. That's up to you. The idea to use the system properly is, oh yeah, that's the sleeve I saw on the outfit I want to make. So you go on the back. There's all the miniature designs on the back. Loose sleeve. Watch this. Pin the whole page down your pattern making board first. Then you roll the industrial strength pattern paper on top you can see through. Then you put the tack on the scale according to the line next to 116. Then put it across and make that sleeve. See, if you do it like we did earlier, you have all the basic shapes for the model on the one page. If you put that pattern page on top of the paper, you know what's going to happen when you go to make some of the smaller patterns? The page will interfere with making the dots. What we used to do to make the sleeve before we figured out to put it under the paper, we used to fold the pattern page in half this way. Fold it back this way, then we'd pin the sleeve down and made it. I had a lady come back to class a couple of weeks ago with a plastic bag. She had all 15,984 of these little miniature designs that were cut off, every page of the system perfectly. Had to take a year to sit down and cut all the designs off these pages. You know what the question was? How in the world am I going to find a shape of pattern I need in the bottom of that bag? I said, lady, I don't know what to tell you unless you lay them all out on the floor. You know, that might sound funny, but we get several letters every week. People that take the system home, they cut all these designs off the pages, and they write a letter asking how to find the one they need. No, you don't cut the pattern off the page. Something simple as this you never even think of. Put the pattern page down first. Put the industrial strength pattern paper on top you can see through. Then you put the tack on the scale according to the line next to whatever pattern piece you're going to be making. Then put it in that cross and make that pattern piece, you follow? That way the page doesn't interfere with making the dots. Then you put a piece of tape over the cross or X, you put it back in a library of patterns. Now you have the sleeve you needed. Children or grandchildren, they'll have the sleeve they need. Then you go to the next page. So you have to look at the model as pieces. What kind of collar is that? What kind of sleeve? What kind of bodice? What kind of skirt? Oh yeah, that looks like the bodice I need right there. Yeah, that's it. So you go on the back, just make her bodice part. You understand now you've got your sleeve and bodice? You understand how you can interchange the pieces, which is the whole idea? Or make them right like you see them. Now you have to find a collar. Tuxedo? We don't want a tuxedo. Round neck, boat neck, scoop neck, jewel neck, V-neck. Oh, we're looking for a collar, not a neckline. Nah, that's not the collar I need. That's not it either. That's not even close. That one doesn't even have a collar, neither is that. Oh, there's the collar I need, right there. So you go on the back and just make her collar. You understand again how you can interchange the patterns, which is the whole idea, or make them right like you see them? How about slacks? Good pair of slacks are what, 8 or 10 bucks? Cost you $50 or $60 a good pair of slacks, aren't they? Blue jeans are 30. What would they be worth if they're custom fit? This will make slacks fit just nice, that waistcoat. How about good winter coats? They're $10 or $12, aren't they? Now, I know you wear coats around here. You could save a bundle of money making your own coats and jackets. See, there's some men's patterns. How many of you sew for men? A couple of you do. And if it don't fit, they won't wear it, will they? Oh, they'll wear it for a little while, but then you'll find it hanging back in the closet. How about children? How many of you sew for children? You can save a bundle of money sewing for children. See, there's men's patterns, children's patterns, evening wear, sports wear, maternity wear, western wear, lingerie. You name it, there's every basic shape of pattern you ever need. You just have to find it. Once you know where it's at, though, you'd always know. Like my older sister, she has her system in alphabetical order. She has A-line skirt under A, sailor collars under S, gore skirts under G. If you know the names of the pattern pieces, some people do it that way. Two ladies will look at this model here one day. Where is she? Right here. Yeah, this is it. One lady says, oh, I like this outfit here, this one right here, especially that blouse. You know what lady next to her said? Nah, I don't like green. What do you mean you don't like green? That might be pretty in a pink, orange, red, or polka dot. See the next page? The model's plain black and white. I wish they made them all black and white so people wouldn't do that. Now, they look a lot prettier in color, sure. Now, a lot of people get excited, take a system home, jump in the back here. Oh, a lady asked me one day, she says, wait a minute. When I make patterns from my own measurement, how do I know how much material to buy? How are you going to know how much material to buy? We'll put it this way. When you buy material like we tell you right here, how to economize, what does economize mean? Save money. You'll save yourself enough money within a year's time at the longest to have paid for the system we've just taught you about. Even when working with commercial pattern, you should be getting your material like that. You ladies ever make any garments? Have any fabric left? You ladies have any leftover fabric at home? Some of you have enough fabric to open up your own fabric store, right? Call it leftovers fabric. Some of you have to hide it from the husbands when you come from the fabric store so he doesn't see you're buying any more. Lady one day, she said, that's all right. He didn't ask me to buy that fishing pole, shotgun, or bowling ball he's got, so I don't worry about that anymore. That's what she said. And besides that, the one who winds up with the most fabric wins. That's right. Every class somebody's heard that. Okay. You want to get material like we're going to tell you. It only takes a few seconds, and you'll save a bundle of money. First, you make your pattern for your own measurement like we've shown you, or get your commercial pattern, whatever way you want to do it. Then what you have to do is determine the width of the material you're going to buy. What does it come in? 36, 45, 54, 60, whatever it might be. Create yourself a field half the width of the cloth. In other words, if you were going to buy 45-inch width material, how wide would this field be? Be 22.5 inches apart, wouldn't it? You understand why half, don't you? Because the fabric's double. Then you take your patterns and lay them in the field. These are all pattern pieces. See what we're doing? Lay them all on a straight. See what we're doing? We're laying our patterns out. Move them around, add your own allowance. Then all you have to do is measure the length of this area that your pattern's laid in. This way you buy exactly what you need. If you don't know what width you're going to buy before you go there, create yourself fields half the various widths of the cloth apart. Some people have masking tape taped on the floor according to half the width of all the cloth. Some use that Pellon to half the width of all the cloth. Some use old bed sheets. Some use the pattern making boards. I've actually seen some take their patterns right to the store with them to lay them along the fabric. You understand how to get material? Lay your patterns out in half the width and measure the length. Only takes a few seconds to do that each time. You'll save a bundle of money. Suppose you're buying 60-inch width material. How wide would this field be?
30.
It'd be 30 inches wide, wouldn't it? Everybody understand how to get material? Lay your patterns out in half the width and measure the length. Only takes a few seconds to do that each time. You'll save a bundle of money. Now, you understand the biggest advantage that comes the first 2 parts of class? Biggest advantage that comes the first 2 parts of class is now you can get the whole collection of master patterns at one time. In the system we've taught you about, it takes approximately 300 models to display all those master patterns. But, there's always a but, isn't there? Patterns nowadays are not cheap. They're anywhere from $5 to $10 each, aren't they? Isn't that what you have to pay for patterns now? So let's only charge $5 for a set of patterns. 300 times 5 is how much? 300 times 5? No, 300. Yeah, that's simple arithmetic, isn't it? $1,500. You can mail for the system anytime you want. $1,500. All I ask is one thing. When you mail in your $1,500, make sure you give my name. I tell you what was earlier? Bruce. If you give my name, I'll pay the postage for you. Yeah, I'll even pay the postage. Why will I pay the postage? Well, besides that. Because I'm a nice guy. Nobody even fell off their chair. I heard the ladies in Hamilton had money to burn. You didn't burn it already, did you? Did you burn it already? Forget $1,500. Although that's what the system's worth if we're properly used. How many of you can see some value in the system if we're properly used? A couple of you? Forget $1,500. Not even $1,200, not even $800, not even $600. You can mail for it anytime you want. Weeks, 6 months, 6 years from now. I'll give you an invoice so do you have the address of the office? Okay, it's commercial time. Best part of the class. It's about time. I love this part. Take one of these and pass them on. See, you can't write to me because we're not here today and gone tomorrow. We're here today and gone tonight. We have to be in a different town in the morning for a class. So you have to write to the office if you want anything. There you go. This thing isn't long enough here. Give one of those lady behind you, please. Okay. Now, the first thing we need you to do with these, whether you're going to get anything here today or not, we need you to put your name, address, and zip code on the invoice here. The only reason why we need your name, address, and zip code is if there is ever anything new and fantastic for sewing we feel you should know about. Of course, the office lets you know about it. Like 5 years ago, they sent everybody a catalog that was registered. So don't be expecting any junk mail because you aren't going to get any. It costs too much money to send things in the mail. So make sure that you leave the top copy before you leave. You can have the yellow copy so you have the address of the office and so on. Now what I'm going to do now is this. I'm going to go through that price list with you so you know what things cost, and we're going to pass things out. What? I said I'm going to go through the price list with you so you know what things cost, and we're going to pass things out. If you can make up your mind as we're going along, fine, because it'll save you a lot of time when the class is over later at 2 o'clock. Of course, when the class is over later, you'll still have time to make your mind up. Now, the first thing that's listed on there is the pattern making toolkit. If you're going to make patterns, you have to have a pattern making toolkit. That's $9.95. What's the postage and handling on the toolkit? $1.50 for postage and handling. You see it off to the side there? So you have $11.45 for the toolkit. Now, if you're going to make patterns, you have to have the pattern making manual. See where it says pattern making manual, $99.95 and $3 for postage? So you've got $102.95 for the pattern making manual. So for the toolkit and the pattern making manual, which is the system we've been referring to, you've got $114.40. Now when you mail for the system, you'll get it within 10 days to 2 weeks. It shouldn't take any longer than that. What you're going to get in the mail, included in the $114.40, is you're going to get the Lutterloh System International, which is what we call the golden rule of measuring, which is available in 19 different languages. If you happen to need another language, it's not a problem. You'll get the complete collection of master sloper patterns. It's the exact same collection we're using in the garment industry, so you could be making custom fit patterns for your own measurements, just like I've done the waistcoat. In other words, you'll get the complete library of master sloper patterns for pattern making, and you're going to get the toolkit for pattern making. Now what's most important in there is you've got that plastic scale that's wrapped up inside there. There's a full lifetime guarantee on the scale. If the dog chews it in pieces, send a piece of it back and we'll replace it at no cost. So you understand what you're going to get if you want to mail for it later? You'll get the complete collection of master sloper patterns for pattern making with the 300 master patterns, and you're going to get the toolkit for pattern making. Okay, is there any questions on that? Any questions on that? No questions on that?
What did you say was in the toolkit?
What's in the toolkit is Scotch tape, which you can buy anywhere, push pins you can buy anywhere, a colored pencil you can buy anywhere. Most important thing in that toolkit is that hard scale that's wrapped up inside there. That's the most important thing in there, okay? All right, is there any questions on that? All right. Now forget the money for the time being and forget the price of the system. How many of you like the idea of making patterns that fit? A couple of you do. I want to make sure those of you that want one of these things are able to get one. Who wants to take one home? I said I want to make sure those of you that want one are able to get one. Suppose I change the price, how many would like to get one? Price is subject to attitude of class. It is too, by the way. It depends on somebody wants it. What's it going to cost? How many would like to have one? Yeah, I know, most of you would. Let's see, if you want to take the system home today, the price of the system today, instead of $114, will be $79 even. One lady says, what about that toolkit? Well, some of the instructors, they charge extra $10 for the toolkit, and they get it too. I don't think that's right myself. You have to have the toolkit to do it because it has that hard scale in there. I'll include the toolkit in with the $79. So that's about what, $89, $99, $109, about $35 less than if you mail to the office for it on your own. See, we have the system in over 1,700 schools and colleges. We get a lot of teachers who come to class, especially at the night classes. They like the idea. They can mail in for the system for the price that's quoted to class, whatever it might be. So if you're a teacher, you're from a school, all that you need is a purchase order from your school or a letterhead of some kind. Now, and of course, in order for you to get at that cost, you have to make up your mind while we have the class. And you have a big disadvantage this morning on a Saturday because there's no evening class. I had a lady one day, boy, I'd like to get that system, but I didn't bring any money with me. If you didn't bring your checkbook, you don't have your credit card, if you don't want to mail in the regular amount later, but you don't want to pay for all at once. See down in the corner of that page there where it says something about a layaway? What you can do is you can put something down on this here. It doesn't make any difference. What, $1? If that's all you brought along, that's fine. Or 50. And we let you get the system at the school price. Of course, the disadvantage to this layaway thing is what? Yeah, the biggest disadvantage is you don't get to take it home like you do if you pay for it. And I have to add some postage and handling that it costs to send the system. So you understand the system can be put on layaway at the class price and you can take as long as you want to pay for it. Okay, is there any questions on that? Any questions on that? No questions on that? Okay. How many want to take a system home today? A couple of you do. If you want to take one home today, raise your hand so I can go ahead and pass them out. Now, I personally have a very important message for you viewers at home. If you haven't already noticed, it's commercial time, which of course is the best part of the class. Most of you have already decided you'll need some of these tools. Of course, the only disadvantage you have at home is I personally can't be there to pass things out like we're doing in the class. The best thing for you viewers at home to do is to get out your order form and check off the things you'll need as we go along. You do need every tool we teach you about, which of course may not be possible. That's why we also have a layaway plan. The main things you need to make patterns are the system, the 2 curves, and some paper. If you just make slacks, you need the bond fit slack pattern and Taylor's curve, or the video cassette on slacks, which will include the basic miniature slack pattern and again Taylor's curve. With the design books 1, 2, and 3, you can always use that information on your patterns you already have at home. If nothing else, you could always use a good pair of scissors. The walking foot and the roller foot are a must in sewing. As soon as you finish viewing the video, get on the phone for credit card orders and call the number listed on your order form. This is the fastest possible way to place your order so you can start sewing right away. Or you can mail your check or money order to the address listed on your order form. Thank you for your order, and I am confident you'll enjoy the rest of the video. That second column there, I need you to put 79 even in that second column there. Okay, now, the rest of you that want to put on layaway, how many want to put on layaway? A couple of you do. You see down in that box where it says layaway? However much you want to put down on layaway, doesn't make any difference, $1, $5, or 10. Put that amount in that layaway box there, you follow? Okay, then the next thing says children. In your system, there's 10 or 12 patterns for children. Once every 2 years, our designers make new patterns for children. If you mail for the children's supplement later for 100 patterns, it's $21 for children's. Every 2 years, we make a new one. At the class, the children's, instead of $21, the class price for children's would be $16 for 100 patterns for children. Okay, does anybody want the children's patterns? A couple of you do. I've got a couple of supplements left. Do you have more children's outside? Okay, who else wanted the children's? Lady over there? We do have some more outside. Okay, next thing is men's. Cross that off. We've temporarily discontinued the men's. You don't want the old men's supplement. There's a kilt in there. There's a leisure suit made out of polyester. There's a Nehru jacket. Remember those? Okay. You don't want the old men's supplement. There's enough men's in the system. There's 4 suits, there's a tuxedo, there's pajamas and jackets and coats and robes. There's enough men's in here right now. We're making a new men's supplement, but it isn't quite ready yet. Yeah, towards the end of the year, the men's supplement will be ready in November. So you want to wait till the new one comes out. You don't want the old one. Okay, now the next thing says current supplement. Now pay strong attention to this. I explained these current supplements before we started the first 2 parts of the class, didn't we? Remember I was telling you that 4 times every year, in the spring, summer, fall, and winter, we have our designers make up new patterns for you. For 40 patterns, we charge $14. Now we make 4 a year. 14 times 4 would be what, 56? See where it says subscription to all 4 current supplements? See, the people that have the pattern system, you're on a special registration form. Once in a while, you get a letter in the mail. You know what the smart person does instead of paying $14 for the fall supplement? The smart person will get the subscription. Because instead of 56 for all 4, it's only how much? It's only 42 by the time you add the postage. So you understand it's $14 less for the same thing? You understand the current supplement is the subscription? Okay, a lot of people get the system at the class. They want to get the subscription right along with it. If you want to get subscription at the class, instead of 42, the class price for subscription would be 33. We don't charge you the postage like the office does, and we mail you 5 quarterly fashion supplements instead of 4. In other words, you get 193 right away, which is the summer one. You get 193. This has been out for a while. You get 194 sent in the mail. This is the fall one. You get 195, 196, 197. You understand you get the next 5 quarters? We can't send you the winter one because it isn't made yet, you follow? You understand the current supplement is the subscription, okay? All right, is there any questions on 1 through 5? If not, block that off on your invoice so you don't confuse that with the rest of those things on there. You understand the supplements and subscription all have to do with the pattern system we've taught you about in the first 2 parts of class? Okay, yes?
Okay, on the subscription there, that doesn't include children's, it's just like
Okay.
adult.
Inside the quarterly fashion supplements, there's a few men's and children's patterns in each one of these. There is a few men's and children's, okay? All right. Okay, any questions on, yes?
If you lay away the book, the little toolkit.
Yes, that'll go with it too. Yes. On layaway, I'll include the toolkit also, of course. Okay, any questions on 1 through 5? If not, what I'm going to do now is this. I'm going to continue with commercial time. We'll get all that out of the way at once. I'll go through the rest of the things on that list, very briefly explain to you what they're for, where they'll help you. Some of the tools we've already taught you about, haven't we? Some of them we haven't yet, but we will be before the class is over. See, most of these tools that you saw in the class or are going to see as we're getting further into class are not available in any store. In other words, you can't go to Sears and get the system. I'll save you the trip. It's not there. You can't go to JCPenney's and get these two curves. I'll save you the trip. They just aren't there. Now, some of the little tools we're going to be teaching you about if you hunted hard enough are, but most of them aren't. So we try to carry them at the class for your convenience so you don't have to pay all that what? Postage and handling. I had a lady the other day, I want everything off that list. I said, what did you say? She says, I want everything off that list. You know, she happened to have been paying attention. If you sew at home, you need every tool we teach you about at this class. You need every one of these things. We understand you can't take everything off their home today. What would you have to do in order to take everything off their home today? Well, you'd have to win the lottery, wouldn't you? Or mortgage your house. You know what you do if you see something you like? If you aren't able to take advantage while we have the classes in this area, or if you aren't able to put on layaway, because listen to this, any tool can be put on layaway at the class price. And if you notice on some of the things, there'll be quite a difference in the class price than if you mail it to the office for them later. If you aren't able to do either one of those, the only other thing I can suggest is when the class is over later, we'll give everybody in here a catalog or a brochure, which has pictures of all the tools we've taught you about. There's also pictures of 10 or 12 tools we don't bother to talk about at the class you've never seen before that are invaluable for sewing. So if you do have to mail for the things later, you have a picture of the thing and you can remember what it is. Because there's a lot of things on there, isn't there? Yeah, but you need every one of them. The problem with these is they're 5 years old and the prices on here are 5 years old. In other words, 5 years ago, everything was half what it is now. You understand these prices aren't any good. And that's not the same cutter mat. You see that cutter mat? That's not the same one as we have here, you follow? So you'd have to use the prices on your invoice if you mail off here, you follow? So you're welcome to have a brochure or catalog before you leave later. We'll give everybody one of those. Now the next two tools we've already taught you about are the designer's and tailor's curve. Now what did I use these for in the first part of the class? I used them for pattern making with that system, was what you saw me use them for. Then I used them with pattern designing. What are the instructions on the back of this package for? Yeah, these are for adjusting a commercial pattern. You know, I had a lady the other day, what if I don't get the system today? How come I just can't get them tools to work on my commercial pattern? You should have the tools regardless of whose pattern you work with. You understand the tools are for anybody's pattern? Mail for them later, they're $36 for the set. That's for both. $4 of that's what? Postage and handling. If you want to take the tools home today, forget 36. Not even 35, not even 30. The cost of the tools today would be 22 even. Yes, that's for both. See, we have a little more room on the tools. Two simple reasons why. Number one, I own the molds, the patents, the copyrights for this tailor's curve here. One of our other instructors that does the class, he owns the mold, the patent, and copyright for the designer's curve. We manufacture these tools. We sell them to that European School of Design, so we can give you a better price on the tools in our class than the other instructors. Second reason why is they're made in the United States. We don't have to pay the rate of exchange like we do on most of the tools that come from Europe. See, most of the sewing tools come from Europe. 5 years ago, the value of the dollar was worth twice what it is now. So we do have a little more room on the tools. How many of you want to take the tools home? A couple of you do. If you want to take the tools home, raise your hand and I'll quickly get them passed out. Yes. Can you want to help me pass these out so we can get this out of the way here? Okay. Make sure we give you two different ones. It's always the lady that lives the farthest that I give the two same ones to. So make sure you've got two different ones.
That would be us, yes.
Yeah, there you go. You just want the designer curve? Okay. Pass that over to that lady next to you, please. There you go. Yeah, she's got hers, that's all. Okay. Okay, who else? Lady over there. Did I give you two different ones? Yes, okay. All right. Now, how many of you came to class for slacks? A lot of you did? Okay, put that stuff under your seat right now. Let's cover slacks first. Then I'll come back and finish that invoice up. A lot of you come for slacks. Let's go through the slacks first, then I'll come back and finish that thing up for you. Now, there's going to be 4 ways you can use to make perfectly fitting slacks. There's 4 ways you can use to make perfectly fitting slacks. We're going to show you 3 pattern making systems. See, if you want to get better results, you have to use some kind of pattern making system. Then I'll tell you what you can use to make your slacks fit better. Now, the first pattern making system you can use, we've already taught you about. You can use the system with the miniatures. We covered this method in the first part of the class, didn't we? In the system, there is approximately 25 sets of slacks for men, women, and children. 25 sets. You understand you only need 1 basic straight leg slack to make all the styles? You know why there's 25 sets? So you don't have to do all that designing we were showing. Remember all that designing? Okay, to make perfectly fitting slacks with the system, you should all know how to do this already. I'll go through it very briefly. Let's say you want to make these pants right here. You have to pin your little pattern down to the paper to the board. Now, slacks are longer, so you'd have to roll more paper out for slacks, wouldn't you? You put the tack in the scale according to the line next to, what was it for? 114. You put the tack in a line next to 114. You put it right in the cross on your pants pattern. You line the scale up along each projecting line. You copy all the lines and numbers, just like we did for the waistcoat. You understand that none of the other patterns are any harder to make than a waistcoat? They all follow the same procedure. Read numbers and make dots. You understand once you know how to make the waistcoat, you can make any pattern in the system? You follow? Now you have a piece of paper with a bunch of dots. Now, what tool did I say you would use to play connect the dots? Yeah, that's where we use the Taylor's curve. Now, I didn't use it much because it didn't make slacks with the system. Why do we use the Taylor's curve? Because it has the right curves on it for pants and it's long enough, you follow? Remember how nice the width of that shoulder, neckline, armhole fit earlier? Just as nice as the width of the shoulder, neckline, armhole fit, the circle in the crotch, hips and thighs will fit the same way. Suppose you make the pattern, the crotch is hanging down to here. It's too tight. What did I say you have to do with that tack? Yeah, move the tack up or down in the scale. They'll look like they're made by the tailors. We've been around this system for 35 years. I've made several slacks out of there for myself. My older sister makes all the patterns for her children and her husband. A lot of our women instructors, they bring their sewing machines with them. They sew in the afternoon before the evening classes. We have the system in over 1,700 schools and colleges throughout the country. We have files and files of letters from the sewing teachers and the professors that teach the clothing construction. Same words come up every time. I have never, ever had slacks fit that nice. So you can make perfectly fitting slacks with the system with the miniatures. I know that'll get you better results. Another thing, you can use your system to correct your commercial patterns you already have at home. How do you use the system to fix a commercial pattern? Well, you can't put the cross on a commercial pattern, can you? Why can't you put the cross on it? It's too late. It's already a big pattern, you follow? If you could do that, we'd show you how to do that, but you can't. What you can do, though, is this. Listen carefully. If the style of the pattern you make for your own measurement, if this happens to be the same shape or style as one of those commercial patterns you have, you can take the pattern you made for your own measurement, once it's a big pattern, and lay it on top of your commercial pattern and compare it, you follow? I don't know why you want to do that when you make them right from here, but if you have favorite patterns at home, you may be able to use a system to fix them by laying the big pattern on top of it, you understand? One more thing. You made a bunch of dots on a blank sheet of paper. You can make the legs as wide or as narrow as you want to by moving the dot center out, you follow? So you can make perfectly fitting slacks with the system with the miniatures. One custom fit pair of slacks has to be worth $79. Is there any questions on how to make slacks with the system? We covered this in the first part of the class, didn't we? Okay? Yes?
Yeah, how do you adjust the tummy?
Well, when you measure like we do, partially when you measure like we did, unless it's a very, very extreme problem, that would take care of it. Okay? If you measure like we talked about. If you have a very extreme problem and it's still not fitting right, all you have to do is add to the front side seam a little bit, tapering it to the hip line. That'll give you a little more pattern this way. It would have to be pretty extreme before you do that, okay? Yes?
Okay. Did I understand you to say you measure everything with foundation garments on?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Yes?
In measuring in this fashion, will that make the back part of the pants high enough when you
Yes.
sit?
The circle in the crotch, yes, is mathematically projected. If you make it and it isn't right, you move your tack up or down in a scale, okay?
Well, but if you move it, then would that make it bigger all over?
Or smaller, either whatever you need to do. No, just in the crotch area.
Just in the
Yeah, okay. All right, I'll be covering some of those things that you want to know about in a few minutes here. Okay, now that's the pattern making system. Now the other pattern making system you can use, what's the other pattern making system you can use? Can you hand me those, please? Thank you. The other pattern making system you can use is pattern making from scratch. Remember I said our designers took time to put these booklets together? There's $25,000 worth of specialized schooling and hundreds of years of experience that went into these things. We show you how to make a sloper for skirt. Then after you've got your sloper for your skirt, then we show you how to make the sloper for slacks. You understand this is pattern making from scratch? It's the long way. What's the difference between using the system with the miniatures and pattern making from scratch? Yeah, this takes a lot longer, you follow? It'll still make you perfectly fitting slacks, it just takes a lot longer. You understand you can make patterns from scratch? I passed these around and let you look at them, didn't I? That's another pattern making system you can use, isn't it? Okay, pattern making from scratch. Now, there's a way you can make your slacks fit better. How can you make your slacks fit better? You can try and adjust your commercial pattern. You've all been trying that already, haven't you? Now, if that was working as well as you'd like it to, I don't think you'd have said you've had a problem with pants. It works to a certain extent, doesn't it, adjusting the commercial pattern? Yeah, but you've really never had the proper what to work with before on a commercial pattern. You really never had the proper what? Yeah, you've really never had the proper tool to work with before on a commercial pattern. At least if you have the proper tool, it may come up fitting a lot better. What's the crotch curve for on a commercial pattern? It's for the crotch, right? What do you do with it? What do you do with this on a commercial pattern? Use it for crotch height. Make the circle higher, make it lower. Raise the crotch or lower the crotch. How does the pattern company tell you to adjust for crotch height? What do they tell you to do? Cut your slack completely in half on adjusting line 1, spread it apart or overlap it. You know what's wrong with that? Crotch circle might fit, now the side winds up way up here. Or the crotch circle might fit, now the side winds up way down there. All that does makes the whole thing longer or shorter. If that don't work for you, cutting it all the way in half, why don't you just try raising the circle or lowering the circle? Crotch height, make it higher, make it lower. See how we just made the circle higher or lower without changing the side seam? That way will work if the other way doesn't. Does that make sense? What else is the crotch curve for on a commercial pattern? It's to change the depth of the crotch or the shape of the crotch. Some of you need a deeper curve than what's there. Some of you need a more shallow curve. What we mean by crotch depth is the point being centered in the middle of your body. See, your crotch comes together down here like this. If the crotch depth is not right, what we mean by crotch depth is point being centered. You know what it does? It shifts your whole pants this way or shifts them back that way. See? You know the loops and wrinkles and bags and sags get up front through here and back through here? Have you ever seen people walking down the street with the crotch bagging back to here? It's not too many ladies' pants like that, is it? It's mostly who? Mostly men's pants. You know how you see ladies walking down the street? Just the opposite, with those wrinkles and smiles back there. Isn't that true? The reason is because the crotch depth's not right. The point's not centered. And it's shifting your whole pants this way or shifting them back that way. Now, there's a way you can measure for this. You ever see where they tell you to tie a string around for your waist this way? After you tie a string around for your waist this way, then they tell you it settles down for your waist, then they tell you to sit down and measure. Right at the table or chair, right at the side here. What's that for? Crotch? I don't think you have a crotch on the side. That's what they tell you it's for, don't they? Whoever thinks of these things, I have no idea. You can try it. It might be okay for that first thing we told you, the crotch height. Let's say from here to the string is 10, add a half to an inch for ease. That might work for the crotch height, the first thing we talked about. But it's not going to get the depth right. It's not going to get the point centered. There's a better way to try to measure to get the crotch point centered. Tie a string around for your waist this way. Get yourself another string, hold it onto the string as the front here. Take it on through your legs, the string of the small of your back. Now listen very carefully. How do you know where the middle of your body is under here? Can't see under there. You need your friend to help you, don't you? Better be a good friend too, hasn't it? Okay. How do you know where the middle of your body is under here? Well, listen carefully. If you have something a little weight to it, like a keys or a fishing weight, something you can slide on this string. Carpenters been using this tool for years, haven't they? What do carpenters call this tool? It's called a plumb line, isn't it? Isn't what carpenters call it? In pattern class, this tool is referred to as a crotchometer. Crotchometer. I'll bet you if we sold crotchometers, I'll bet you'd buy them. Who wants one? $5 each. Put your hand up. You can make your own crotchometer. You follow this? You understand the purpose for this weight? When you put your string back around you, that weight should stop in the middle of your body, shouldn't it? So you very carefully step out of it so it doesn't move. Then all you have to do is compare the front string to the front crotch. That'll give you an idea whether you have to add or subtract from the point, won't it? Compare the back string to the back crotch. That gives you an idea whether you have to add or subtract from the point, doesn't it? How do you add or subtract from the point of the crotch? With the crotch curve. Listen carefully. Let's suppose you have to add to the point to make it deeper to get the point centered. Let's say you use the part of the crotch curve from number 20 to 4 on your first commercial pattern, and you like how that shape fits from 20 to 4. You write that down. Because guess what you reshape all the commercial pattern crotches to? 20 to 4. Suppose you have to draw off the point and move it in and make it shallower and use the part of the crotch curve from 16 to 0. And you like how that shape fits from 16 to 0, you write that down. Because guess what you reshape all the commercial pattern crotches to? 16 to 0. Now you get a better idea about the crotch curve? Now you see what those numbers are on there for. What are those numbers on there for? The numbers are for reference points when adjusting your commercial pattern. You understand when you make patterns with the system, you don't need the words and numbers? This could be blank when you make patterns with the system, you follow? You get a better idea about the crotch curve. Crotch height, make it higher, make it lower. Crotch depth, getting the point center, make it deeper, make it shallower. All that measuring is going to get it close. You know how you know you really have it right? You know how you really have it right? You have to make a test fitting out of gingham fabric. See, muslin doesn't drape like normal material, doesn't have any design on it. If you use the gingham fabric, all you have to do is look at the inner leg seam on your test fitting. Where does that inner leg seam have to be? Obviously where? In the middle of your leg. If it's not, you know you didn't do that right. You understand that's all pants is the crotch? That's all pants is the crotch. If you can get that crotch point centered, you'll have a pretty good fitting pair of slacks. Because the rest of this is easy. What's the hip curve part of this thing for on a commercial pattern? That's the add or subtract from the hips, right? How does the pattern company tell you to adjust the hips? What do they tell you to do? Cut your slack completely in half. Spread it apart or overlap it. You know what's wrong with that? All that does makes the whole thing wider or narrower. If you notice, all they tell you to do to the pattern is make it longer or shorter or wider or narrower. Doesn't mean it fits right. The only proper way to adjust the hips on slacks is like we're about to show you. When you adjust the hips, you don't want to change the waist and thigh. So you keep it at nothing at the waist. In other words, you don't remove the waist. Shift it out, add it to the fullest part of the hip, shift it back, taper it down. You understand you taper the hip adjustment on slacks? To make it smaller, same thing. You don't want to change the waist and thigh. Keep it at nothing at the waist, shift it in, draw it off the fullest part, shift it back, taper down. See how you made the hip bigger or smaller without changing waist and thigh? Now how do you do that without the proper tool? You'd have to try to do it freehand, wouldn't you? You understand you tapered on slacks? Now on skirts it's done totally different. On a skirt, if you add the half-inch your style skirt here, you have to add all the way down. It won't hang right on a skirt. You follow? I had a lady jump out of her seat the other day. What about me? My hip on this side is much higher than the other side because I have an uneven hip. How am I going to fix that? She'd have to fit both sides, wouldn't she? Her hip curve would start sooner from the waist on this side it would on the other. In other words, the fullest part would be up higher. So it's for an uneven hip. Move it up or move it down. What's the inseam part of this thing for? Add or subtract from the inseam. Anytime you add or subtract from legs, you'd always do it on all four sides. Here, 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 and here. Remember I said the best way on learning on how to use the tool on your commercial pattern is by actually what? Actually using it's the best way. If you're willing to work with the tool, you will get some results, especially if you can get that crotch point centered. Most important correction on your commercial pattern is what? The crotch depth. That's adjusting a commercial pattern. Everybody knew you had to do all that already, didn't you? Yeah, but at least you know how to get the crotch centered and you got the right tool to work with. Any questions on adjusting the commercial pattern slack pattern? That's another way you can make your slacks fit. It'll come up fitting better.
Can I make it up higher in the back to fit?
That's the crotch height.
No, but it gets up so high, then it must fold that down.
Well, that's a sway back then. If you make it, if the crotch height's right and you're still getting all that in the center back, we don't really have time to cover this, but we're going to do it anyway. Okay. All you have to do, same thing would apply for a skirt, you follow?
Yeah.
Okay. If the crotch height is right from here to there and you still have that excess sticking up in the center back here, all you'd have to do is cut your pattern from adjusting line 1, from the crotch seam to the outside seam. Don't cut through this out here. And then pull that down. Now when you pull this down, it looks something like this. See how that sticks out there, that little corner? So you come up and snip that little corner off. When you cut the waistline's slanted on your pattern, isn't it? When you cut your material, it's going to be slanted. When it's hanging in the closet on a hanger, it's going to be slanted. But when it's on you, it's going to be right because it's cut to match your sway back, you follow? Same thing would apply for skirt. Make sure your crotch height is right first, though, before you go doing that. Okay? Any other question on a commercial pattern? Yes?
I'm sort of at that sway back home. I'm sort of confused about the crotch. I don't want you to take care of it.
It's in this booklet here, the crotch height. If you really don't understand, when the class is over, I'll be glad to spend a few extra minutes to make sure you do, okay? Okay. All right. Now that's adjusting a commercial pattern. How many of you came for slacks? Was there a lot of you today? Yeah, a lot of you did. There's another way you can make perfectly fitting slacks. I'm going to show you another pattern making system. Another pattern making system you can use is you can use a master pattern or a sloper pattern. What's a master key? Fits all the locks, doesn't it? Another pattern making system you can use is you can use a master pattern or a sloper pattern. Master key fits all the locks, doesn't it? This method is called a bond fit patterner. I call this a master sloper pattern for women's pants. What's the purpose for owning a master sloper pattern for women's pants? Any size, any style women's pants can be made from this pattern. So you'd never have to buy another pants pattern. How it works is really very simple also. It's a hard plastic master pattern. It's in pieces. Now, all you've got to do is loosen these knobs up. See that? Obviously, that would be a straight leg slack right there, wouldn't it? Loosen all these knobs up. See how when you loosen knobs up, you can pull it all apart? See how it pulls all apart? Now this comes from Europe, so all these numbers on here would be centimeter numbers. Measure your waist with your centimeter tape. Let's say you measured your waist and you're 82 centimeters at the waist. You pull this apart, your waist measurement 82 shows up a little window at the waist. 82, 82. When your waist measurement shows up little windows, tighten it up at the waist. Now you have a pattern, correct width at the waist, that fast. After you've set your waist, you come down and set the width of your leg. You have to set the width of your leg to your waist measurement in order to make this a basic straight leg. If that's set to 82, you've got to set the width of the leg to 82 and tighten that up. 82. 82, 82, you follow? Now you've got basic straight leg slacks. Now you look and see what the hip curve says. It says the hip curve now is 107. The number that shows up there after you set your waist and width of your leg is okay for most of you. Measure straight around like you normally do. Let's say you've measured your hips and you have large hips and you're 112. How do you make the hip bigger without changing the waist width of the leg? Well, you see the hip enlarging panel? If you need extra hip width, slide this out 5 more numbers. 107 and 5 is what? 112. Tighten the hip curve up. See how you've got extra hip width without changing waist width of the leg? Now you also have the crotch depth. Remember the crotch depth is this point here, getting the point centered? It tells you how to measure and set the crotch depth in the instructions. We showed you another way to do it. Either way is correct. Let's say you measured and found out you have to set your crotch depth to 90. Slide this out to your crotch point 90, shows up little window, tighten the crotch point up. You understand now your crotch point centered? Now you also have the crotch height. Now for crotch height, all you'd have to do is trace the top half of the master pattern on your paper or your fabric. From point A to point B. See this point A over here? See this point B over here? See how you trace the top half on the master pattern on your paper or your fabric? Now the crotch height is over here. And it starts out at 56 and goes to 102. You see the grading lines for the crotch height? It tells you how to measure and set the crotch height. Let's say you measured and found out you have to set your crotch height to 100. Drop the master sloper pattern down to that crotch line. 100 shows up at the dot. Then you complete your crotch height. You've already got the depth out there. Shove it over, complete the other side same. You understand all you're doing with this method is moving the pieces in or out, or up or down, till all your measurements show up in those little windows or those little boxes. and then you hook your legs on there. There's a place to hook them on there, but I'm not going to spend the time to do that. It isn't necessary. 45 minutes later at the longest, this is what you have. You have a pattern that has a correct width at the waist, correct crotch height front and back. Crotch will be centered in the middle of your body. You have the correct width on the hip, the thigh, and the correct overall length. No cutting, adjusting, slashing, spreading, taping, and hoping it fits. If you measure right, it does work. Now, it has two fronts. Why would it have two fronts? With the dart and without. You know, like for elasticized waist tucks, pleats, and gathers, you have the back crotch. Now, look at the back crotch. See how the back crotch curve is a little lower and a little wider? This pattern has what we call a European cut to the shape of the crotch, which means there's more of a shelf to it. Just like all the patterns out of the system that you make out of that system, they all have the same European cut to the shape of the crotch. So it eliminates the loops and wrinkles and bags and sags you get back through here on your ready-made pattern, because the crotch has a much better shape for you. You have the pocket, the little placket for the zipper. I don't spend any more time on this. For those of you that would like to make perfectly fitting slacks with the Bond Fit Master Sloper pattern, you should be able to see the value in this thing already. If it were in Sears or Kmart, it's not in any store, but if it were and if you were to get one, it would take you 45 minutes the first time you do it. 45 minutes to do what?
Measure
45 minutes to read this page of instructions. Front. Notice it's mostly pictures, isn't it? And back to make sure you're working it right. The reason I briefly explain how it works is not only take you a half hour. Yeah, but how do you know how to draw the styles off the Master Sloper pattern? Isn't it what's most important? How do you know how to draw the styles off it? Remember we said any size, any style woman's pants comes off this pattern. How do you know how to draw the styles off it? That's why there's two fronts. Most important thing in the pants kit besides the master pattern, you know what's the most important thing in there? Is the lady that developed the master pattern. She has an 18-page booklet that says pants. She starts off telling you and how to make any type of waist, any type of leg. Shorts, culottes, gaucho pants, slim jims, blue jeans, cigarette pants, pistol peats. Any size, any style woman's pants can be made for the master pattern. Oh, they also have a bodice and skirt works along the same idea. We don't bother to talk about those at the class, but a lot of people come to class for pants. It's a brilliant solution. It's another answer for you. You understand you can use this master pattern to correct your commercial pattern by laying it on top? I don't know why you want to do that when you make them right from here, but if you do have favorite patterns at home, you might be able to use that to fix them also. Okay, any questions on the Master Sloper pattern for pants? That's another pattern making system, isn't it? Now you have three pattern making systems. One lady asked one day, well, if I get the system, do I need to get that too?
No.
Yeah, I suggest you get this right along with the system. Why do you think I suggest you get this right along with the system? Well, yeah, I need the money. Okay. You can make slacks out of the system. You understand a lot of people make a lot of slacks, they get that right along with it. Is there any questions on the master pattern? Okay, that comes from Europe. If you want to mail for it later, I think it's number 8 on there. It's called Bond Fit Patterner Slacks. It's $40 by the time you add the postage and handling. That's one of those tools that come from Europe. At the class, the bottom line on the pants, instead of 40, would be 30 for the master pattern for pants. Well, by the time you add the postage, it's $40, is it? Yeah, I have some pants patterns. How many of you want a pants pattern? A couple of you do? If you want a master pattern for pants, oh, did I tell you it's a woman's pattern? You can make it for a man if you change the shape of the crotch, you follow? You'd have to experiment with the shape of the crotch. So you really want to stick with a woman with the master pattern? How many of you want one of those? A couple of you do? Okay. We've had this in the class for what, 6 years now? We've had people that have made these slacks that have got it at previous classes that come back wearing the slacks that they had made. Okay, is there any questions on the master pattern for pants? Now you've got 4 ways for pants, don't you? If you make a lot of slacks, I suggest you use all 4 ways. Any questions on slacks at all? That's another answer for you. Okay, unless there's any questions on slacks, let's go back and finish that invoice up so we can cover the last 45 minutes of the class. The next thing that's listed on there after the slack pattern is a pattern fitting cassette. Now what this is, the professors in the company made this tape. on adjusting commercial patterns. It's 90 minutes long. It has all the corrections for a commercial pattern. You understand it's all the adjustment procedures for commercial patterns? If you want to know the answers to the corrections for commercial patterns, that's what the tape is. And it's $6 at the class. The next one is the pattern making cassette. What's that for? Well, inside your system, Sylvia, the lady that owns the system, she has picture form instructions on how to use the system, doesn't she? Some people rather listen to the instructions. You understand the pattern making cassette is to be used with the system? If you'd rather listen to the instructions, that's $6 also. Okay, now the next thing is the tape and scale. Oh, I skipped the paper, didn't I? I'll come back to that in a second. Let me explain this tape and scale. In your system, we gave you the yellow tape and scale, didn't we? Okay? With the plastic scale wrapped up inside there. So you don't need this. The tape and scale they're talking about, it's the one I passed around. It's a cardboard scale fixed on a centimeter tape. If you want it, it's $5. It has to be mailed by the office. On your leaflet to go home, don't you have a paper one? You can reinforce that and put it on your own tape measure, can't you? You understand you can fix your own if you want to. If you insist on having one, we can't get the yellow ones, you follow? So we have a cardboard one, it's $5. You can fix your own, okay? Now the next thing is the vellum paper. That's important. You know, I had a lady come to class in Dayton last week. I was at your class 10 years ago when you were here, and I bought that system, 2 of them curves, and 1 roll of that paper. I got home in the afternoon with my system, I started making patterns like gangbusters, and I ran out of paper. I came down there at 10 o'clock at night, and you were gone already. Well, I says, lady, I probably had a small class. I probably got done early. Boy, was I mad, she said. Give me 5 rolls. You know how often we hear that? I've been doing this class since 1972. We get people that have been to class previously that only got 1 roll the first time. They always get 2 or 3 the second because you can't ever have enough. You know, as big as this country is, there's only one place in the whole United States we can get to make us this vellum paper. If you want, I'll give you the address. It's on the box here. It's in, here it is. It's in Wayne, New Jersey. You know where Wayne, New Jersey is? It's in New Jersey. You have to buy 10,000 rolls at a time. You got to send your money in advance. Then you got to pay the freight to get it out here. We don't have much room on the paper because shipping these boxes all over the country. Mail for it later. It's $8.50. It costs $1.50 to send that thing in the mail. At the class, instead of $8.50, the paper would be $6. Well, by the time you add the $1.50 for postage, it's $8.50, isn't it? Yes? No, it's the class price. Okay? All right. How many of you want some paper? A couple of you do? If you want 5 rolls, put 5 fingers up. 4 rolls, 4 fingers. 3 rolls, 3 fingers. 2 rolls. You can't give more than 10 rolls. How come? Because you only have 10 fingers. How many of you want some paper? Raise your hand. I'll quickly get it passed out. If nothing else, use it to wrap your sandwiches and line your shelves with it. Okay. There's enough. 2 rolls will probably last you all. Pass that lady behind you, please. Who else? Got to watch this cord here. Okay, there you are. There you go. Okay. We've got plenty of paper, don't we? Yeah. Yeah. Who else wanted some paper? Pass it to the lady behind you, please. Yeah, we have some more. Here you go. Okay. All right.
Anybody else?
Now the next thing after the paper is the... About time you did something. Instead of just hanging around. All right. Is the rotary cutter and guide. Now, how many of you said you had the Olfamat? A lot of you have the Olfamat. Okay, so you don't need another one if you already have the Olfamat. A lot of you in here have that already. Listen carefully. If you want the cutter and guide arm separately, it would be $15. There's no discount on that. If you already have a mat. Now, some of you have the cutter but no guide arm. If you just wanted a guide arm to put in your cutter, it would be $5. But you may have to drill a hole in your cutter, because see, these old ones don't have holes in them. What you need is a 1/4-inch drill bit, and that'll fit in there, you follow? Now, if you don't have the Olfa cutting mat, you have to have that. If you can find this large mat in the store, it now costs $41.50. That's at least. So let's call it $42. And $15 for the cutter and guide is $57, you follow? If you want to mail for it later, it's the last thing on your invoice. It's only how much? $52. Put a check mark by that. That's a good price if you have to mail to the office for it later. It's $5 to $10 less than you'll have to pay for that in the store if you could even find it. You understand it's a good price if you mail in later? Okay. At the class, instead of $52 for all three, it would be $37. That's the best price in the class is the cutter, mat, and guide. That's at least $20 less than you'll have to pay for that in the store if you could even find it. I guarantee you the large Olfa cutting mat costs more than $37. So actually, we're giving you the cutter and guide for free. If you can't take advantage of that while we have the classes, put that on layaway. You understand $37 is for all three? Okay. How many of you want the large cutter, mat, and guide? A couple of you do? Okay. We're going to pass the cutters and guides out now. We'll give you the mats when the class is over later, so you have to sit and fight those things for the next hour. We'll give you the mats later when the class is over. But don't forget to get your large cutter, mat, and guide. Does anybody else want the cutter, mat, and guide? Yeah. Don't forget to get your cutter, mat, and guide. Do we have plenty of mats? Want to help me pass these out, please? Lady over there wants one. You want one? Oh, you want a guide arm? Okay, I have some here.
What's the price on just the guide arm and cutter?
Cutter and guide would be $15. Okay, if you just want a guide, it's $5. All right. Okay, you understand that's for all three pieces? A lot of you already had the Olfa mat. Okay. She wants a guide arm, lady over there. Okay. Now, the next thing is the design book 1, 2, and 3. Now, I explained what these were, didn't I? Remember I told you that our designers put this together? You know why we originally wrote the design book 1 to be used with the system? Remember all that designing we were showing you? If you want to do all that designing with your system, you should have the design book 1. That's why she wrote it. Okay? That's why we wrote this. Didn't I tell you this information can be used on a commercial pattern as well? This is the main one. It's $18.50 if you mail for it. Now, design book 2 and 3, what were they all about? That was pattern making from scratch for bodices, skirts, and slacks. And not only that, it's all the designing information for bodices, skirts, and slacks. They're $18.50 also. So it's about, what, $56 for the 3 design booklets? If you were going to use these to make patterns, you might as well have the system, hadn't you? You understand if you were going to plan on making patterns with these, you may as well have the system? Some people want this for all the designing information. If you wanted all 3 for the designing information, instead of 56, all 3 would be 30. For all 3 design books. Now, if you just want one, usually the main one that people get first is that blue one. If you just want design book 1, it's $12 instead of $18.50. How many of you want all 3? A couple of you do? You see where it says out of stock? All you have to do is put send design books. The office will mail these to you. What about the postage? Well, I guess it's not your fault we run out. These go like hotcakes, these design books. We run out of those, so they have to be mailed by the office. Now, if you just want the one separately, how many of you want the one separately? This is the main one you need first? A couple of you do? See where it says out of stock? All you have to do is send design book 1. Now, once in a while, the people get 3 separately for skirts and slacks. Okay, is there any questions on the designing information? There's hundreds of years of specialized schooling went into those 3 booklets. Did I pass them around and let you look at them? I did, didn't I? Any questions on those? Okay. Next thing is a roller foot. Did I teach you about a roller foot yet? I didn't, did I? Can I listen to this? As far as I'm concerned, this is some of the most important information in this class is this roller foot. Let me find it and pass it around to you. Isn't there certain types of materials you have problems with when you sew? What kind of materials do you have problems with? Name a few. What kind of materials do you have problems with? Yeah, knits. What else? Naff fabrics. What else do you have problems with? Somebody said satin. If you notice, you have all different answers, don't you? Why do you have all different answers? Because it really depends on what? It depends on the feed system on your sewing machine. What do a lot of you do if you have a problem with fabric? What are the same things you do to help it feed through? You lower your feed dog, you pull it, use wax paper, tissue paper, talcum powder, foot powder, toilet paper. Forget the wax paper, tissue paper, talcum. That's why they devised the roller foot. Listen carefully. Hear that? I'll pass it around so you can feel it. There's a special design on the roller. Now, you may have to adjust your pressure with certain types of fabrics. How does it help with a light shear slippery fabric? The design on the roller, what does that design do? It feeds the cloth through straight. In other words, it keeps it from slipping around. That's how it'll help you on a light shear slippery fabric. How does it help in the other direction? Plastic, vinyl, leather, canvas, burlap, ultra suede. Your regular pressure foot's flat, isn't it? This has rollers on it. You understand what the rollers do? Helps feed the cloth through a lot smoother because of the rollers. When they first devised the roller foot about 30 years ago, what came out about 30 years ago? What was the roller foot originally designed for? Does anybody really know? What came out about 30 years ago? Yeah, remember back when the double knit fabrics first came out? Your sewing machines would not feed that cloth through, so they had to do something. That's when they originally designed to use the roller foot. It was originally designed to be used with sewing with double knits. As people started using the thing over the years, they found other uses for it. It'll sew over pins and metal stays, it'll zigzag. A lot of people use it to sew lace on. Some use it for top stitching, putting pockets on. Anytime you have several layers of fabric you want to sew. Oh, fake fur? Regular pressure foot's open in the front, isn't it? Fake fur will catch in there. You can sew fake fur in fabrics that catch because it's closed in front. Zippers. You know what a zipper foot is? Half a pressure foot. Don't use a zipper foot to sew the zipper in. Use the roller foot because there's enough room on the one side you can catch enough of the edge of the zipper that'll help feed the zipper in a lot smoother. A lot of people use it to sew zippers in. Very simply this. Roller foot will replace 20 years worth of sewing experience. It's invaluable with a problem material. Yet there's only 2 machines in the world that it comes with as standard equipment. Viking Sewing Machine Company, they used to put them with their machines as standard equipment, but they don't anymore in the new ones. The only other company to give you something like this right now is Elna. Top of the line Elna comes with roller foot. Otherwise, it usually doesn't come as standard equipment. It's something you have to buy extra, and it's invaluable with a problem material. In fact, in one of the older sewing machines that I have, I took the other foot off and threw it away. I put the roller foot on, I've left it on ever since. Some people leave it on all the time. Who has a roller foot? Who has one? A couple of you do? Who uses theirs? Where have you used yours?
I use it making doll clothes.
Doll clothes? Okay, who else has one that's used it? Where have you used yours?
Practically on everything.
You use it on everything? Where have you used yours?
On the knits.
Knits, that's what it originally came out for. Who else has one that's used? Where have you used yours?
I think I used it for knits, but for some reason it's misplaced my forgot.
You forgot you had it? Okay. See, if we had more people that have one, we get all different answers. Because it really depends on the feed system on your sewing machine. I'm going to put it bluntly. If you don't do anything else about any other tool in this class, if you've got a sewing machine at home, you should have that roller foot. There's places this thing helps you we haven't even begun to mention. Now notice there's 3 sizes, long, short, and slant. If you want to mail for it later, they're $9. That's one of those sewing machine parts that come from Europe, and they're worth $900 for what this thing will help you with. I want to make sure those who don't have one are able to get one. Forget $9. We'll give those away.
No.
At $6. Okay. Who wants a roller foot? Put your hand up. What kind of machine you got? Is it over $500? Touch and sew, stylus, future? Okay, an old one. What kind of machine you have?
I don't even remember.
Doesn't matter. Most machines are the same one. It's this one here. Is it over $500 that you pay for it? Yeah. Okay. This one here. Who else wants one? What kind of machine you got?
Singer.
Is it over $500? Where's all those slant walking roller feet? Don't have a one up here. Okay. Who else wants one? What kind of machine you got?
I got a slant needle to these back for you.
Okay.
New,
New home?
I need a string and a slant.
Oh, you need a straight and a slant? Okay. Here's the straight one. What kind of machine? Yeah, it goes on her, yeah. Yeah, it'll go on her. Who else wants one? The newer ones it comes with, the older ones it came with, rather. What kind of machine you got? That doesn't matter. It's not a Singer slant, is it? Most machines are the same. There you go. All right, next thing is a walking foot. What's the walking foot for? Wait, I didn't cover walking foot, did I? No. I'm going to skip that right now. Why am I going to skip the walking foot? So you don't confuse it with the roller foot. That'll be coming up in the last 45 minutes of the class, which is coming up in about 10 minutes here. That all fits in with the new technique on how to sew sleeves and collars, shoulders, and side seams. I'm going to skip that right now, because that fits in with the last part of the class. Okay, now the next thing that's after the walking foot, which I will come back to, is scissors. Did I pass scissors around with some fabric earlier? You know why? I forgot. This is not my stuff here. This is another instructor's equipment. I forgot to do that because he doesn't have any fabric. I better cover that too. How many of you have Ginger scissors? Gingers? A lot of you have those? Yeah, I've got a pair of those. Very fine quality scissor. Probably some of the finest you can get, but they aren't giving them away. Years ago, they were $30. Now they're closer to $40. How many of you have Mark's scissor? How many of you have a Mark's scissor? A couple of you do? That's a very fine quality scissor, but they aren't giving those away. Did you know Gingers and Mark's made by the same company in Brazil? It's the same scissor, just shaped a little differently. About 6 years ago, the company sent us to one of these sewing shows. See, every 6 months in Anaheim, California, Manhattan, New York, they have this big annual sewing show. What they do there is they introduce all the new tools and gadgets of the sewing trade. About 6 years ago, there was a new company at the sewing show that was introducing scissors. These scissors are made by a company called Kai Cutlery. What's cutlery? Cutlery is knives, isn't it? Lady had a big booth that's set up there. She says, why don't you come over here and try this new brand of scissor? You know what I told her? I don't need any more scissors. I must have 40 pairs if I got one. She says, well, I didn't ask you to buy them. I just asked you to try them. I said, all right, I'll try them. She had a bunch of fabric laying there. I picked up a piece of bridal silk. You know what bridal silk is? It's a real thick fabric. Now, there's a way you can test your scissors to see if it's any good at all. The way you test your scissors, you fold a big thickness of fabric. I folded that stuff 20 thickness. It was that thick. You put a little tiny pen dot on the fabric, a little tiny dot with a pen. Make sure the fabric's folded so thick that when you put the fabric in the scissor, you can't cut it in the air. I put it down on the table. I lined the tip of the scissor up with a pen dot. I took 2 hands and I pressed it down. When I picked the scissor up, the fabric just stayed there. It cut right through that big thickness, right to the tip of the pen dot. I didn't say another word. I sat down and I said, where are the order forms? These scissors are razor sharp. They're sharp as razors. In fact, they are so sharp, they are very, very dangerous. A lot of people have cut themselves, especially near the tip. What I like about them is they're much lighter weight than the Gingers, the Marks, a lot of scissors that I have. They're tension adjustable. What's that mean? You can tighten them if you like them tighter, or you can loosen them if you like them more loose. They can be taken apart for easy sharpening. Did I say sharpening? See this here? I have a pair in my equipment. I've been doing this too for 4 years. This right here. I cut these boxes open. I abuse these things. Doesn't hurt them at all. The only reason you can do that to them because the metal are made with. They're made with a chrome vanadium metal. What vanadium metal is the same metal that some screwdrivers are made with. It's the hardest metal there is. Therefore, they stay sharp forever. You can cut anything with these things without harming them. They cut just as well, if not better, than the finest quality scissor your money can buy, and yet they're about less than half the price. I usually have a piece of fabric in my equipment and pass it around and let you cut with it. You know what happens when I do that? Half the class buys a scissor. Does anybody have the Kai Cutlery dressmaking shear? We've had these in the class close to 6, 7 years now. I've had ladies that have bought these at previous classes that come back. Do you have any more of those scissors you had last time? I have to get another pair for my sister and my mother and my brother. Biggest mail order a company has, these scissors. Once you use this, you will never use another scissor. That's the good news about the scissors. Here comes the bad news. Bad news is this. 4 years ago, one of the big notions companies that got smart, it couldn't beat them. 4 years ago, Dritz bought the rights and put their name on them. They changed all the color of the handles from gray, the left hands were blue. They changed all the color of the handles to brown. They redesigned the packaging, put them in a totally different looking package. They put their name on them big words and the company that really makes them, by Kai Cutlery, little tiny words. And they raised the retail price of the scissor $5. You understand they cost $5 more because of the name on there? What are you going to do? If you can find them anywhere, it costs $21 for right hands, and the store is going to charge $2 more for left hands. Why did the store charge $2 more for left hands? I convinced the office not to do that, but how many of you know somebody that's left-handed? Listen to this. Only 3 companies in the world make true left-hand scissors, only 3. Most of them just reverse the handles and charge you more money. That's not a true left-hand scissor. Here's a true left-hand scissor. See the handle? See where the blade is? It's on this side, on my left side here. See that? Now look at the right hand. See the handle? See the blade? The blade on the right hand is on the other side, isn't it? See, the blade is reversed as well as the handle. These are true left-hand scissors. In fact, you're going to learn how to cut with these at a different angle as opposed to ones with just the handles reversed. Some people have trouble getting used to them at first because they are true left-hand scissors. I'll pass them around so you can feel them. Be careful with these things. They are razor sharp. Where did I start things this morning? Over here? Okay, anyway, if you mail for them later, I don't know what they are, $24, something like that. At the class, the scissor would be $18 instead of $24. We don't charge any more for the left hands, although we should, because they do cost more. But I convinced the office not to do that. How many of you want a scissor? A couple of you do. If you want a scissor, raise your hand and I'll quickly get them passed out. Who said they wanted one? Ladies, left hand? Yeah. Be very careful with these things, especially if there's little children or grandchildren around, because they will cut themselves on them. Okay. I've had ladies bought them 6 years ago, haven't got them sharpened yet. Have not got them sharpened yet. Who else? Let me get this passed out there. I have some more left ones. I'll just have to find them, okay? You want a left hand? Those are right. Okay. Now, the next thing is pinking shears. How many of you still use a pinking shear? This many does? I might as well cover that then if a lot of you use them. Most pinking shears you bought, you wasted your money. What? Most pinking shears you bought, you wasted your money. All they do is chew the fabric. I have a pair of gingers. I paid close to $50 for them. These pinking shears these people make, they cut just as well. In fact, they cut completely to the last tooth. Everybody always asked about pinking shears. We didn't carry them. You have any pinking shears? If you want a pair of pinking shears, forget $50. Cost of the pinking shear at the class will be $22. $22 for pinking shears? That's an excellent price for a pair of pinking shears. You know what's more important than the price? Is they do work. You'll be able to use them. I've sold thousands of these in the past 7 years since we've had them. I have not yet had one lady, not one, complain about them. In fact, our office has a file of letters just the opposite. You know what the letter, every letter says the same thing. I can't believe it. I finally found a pair of pinking shears that works. You feel that? Okay. All right. I'll pass around so you can feel them. Now, when you buy a new scissor or pinky shear, it doesn't matter whose scissor it is. When scissors come out of the factory, there's little burrs of metal in scissors. There's little burrs of metal in scissors. What you want to do, as soon as you cut some fabric, you want to cut some wax paper every now and then. It knocks all the little burrs off. It keeps them sharp. You'll be able to maintain your own scissor and pinky shear by cutting wax paper every now and then. Okay, is there any questions on the scissors? Did I pass those around for you to look at? Okay. Next thing that's listed on there is the button spacer. We showed you that earlier, didn't we? Yeah, that's a tool you use regardless of whose pattern you work with. Mail for it later, it's $16. I saw that in the fabric store a couple weeks ago. It was the same price. At the class, the button spacer instead of 16 would be 11. See, wherever we can give you a good price, we do. Some of the things we don't have any room on, especially the tools that come from where? Europe. Come from Europe. How many of you want a button spacer? A couple of you do? Okay. Now, the last thing on there after the button spacer is the video cassette for slacks. Who wanted a spacer? Was that you? There you go. Okay. Who else? Anybody else? Okay. Now, you didn't run out of money already, did you? Did you run out of money? All right. Last thing that's on there is the video for slacks. Now, listen to this. What's a video? What's a video for slacks? One of our instructors, what he did was they took a slack pattern out of the system. He puts the tack in the scale. He puts it right and across on the pants pattern. He makes all the dots. He uses the tailor's curve and he lines it in. He lays it down on the Oleyar cutter mat and cuts the fabric out. Then he hands it to a sewing teacher. She sits down in front of a Bernina sewing machine and for an hour and 45 minutes gives you detailed sewing instructions for waistbands, pockets, zippers. In other words, it's a sewing video for skirts and slacks. If you don't know how to sew, you need it. It's a sewing instructions for skirts and slacks. If you don't know how to sew, you need it. If you need more sewing instructions for skirts and slacks, you need it. You follow? Right now, we're making a video for a basic dress pattern, a blazer, and men's suits. It's sewing instructions is what it is. You understand you can use these sewing instructions on anybody's skirt or slack? Doesn't have to be the one that's made out of the system. If you mail for it later, it's $52 for the video, and it's worth every penny. Lady that made the video is a sewing teacher in Springfield here, right up the road here. Okay, at the class, the video would be $29. Now, included with the video is the slack pattern that they're making here. Remember I said they make a slack pattern out of the system? You'll get the basic slack pattern they make out of there. Any questions on the sewing video? Okay, now I think I've covered everything on there except for the walking foot. Okay, is there any questions on any of those things on there? Okay, listen to this. Does everybody have everything off the list they want? Well, I know you don't have everything you want, but does everybody have everything they're going to take home with them today, or is there any questions on any of those things?
What's the sales tax?
Oh, we'll do that later. Hold on. Okay, that's coming up in 45 minutes from now. Any questions on any of those things? Okay, now get your notepads out. Now, for the next 45 minutes is the most important part of the class. Besides the pattern making we showed you in the first part, so this is where you really want to take notes, is in the next 45 minutes of the class. We're going to teach you something you have never, ever heard of before. This is just as important as the pattern making system we've taught you about in the first part of the class. Okay, now did everybody get these prices if they wanted them? Because I'm going to have to erase this board for what we're going to show you now. Oh good, we're right on time today. If we get done by 2, that would be good. Okay. Now, remember earlier we talked about let me get my, anybody's sewing room look like this? I've got a mess up here, don't I? Okay. Remember earlier we talked about darts? We mentioned feed dog on your sewing machine when we talked about darts. Everybody sitting here has little teeth or rollers on their sewing machine called a feed dog. Now everybody knows that the feed dog feeds the material through, didn't you? Everybody knew that. But did you know that while it's feeding material through, it's also shortening, gathering, it's what's called easing the bottom piece of cloth faster than the top. It's intentionally designed to do that. Why is it intentionally designed to do that? Very simple. Why? Your fabric's straight, your body's curved. You want the feed dog to ease certain seams so it shapes the cloth to the contours and curves of your body. So if the feed dog on your sewing machines are intentionally designed, what's intentional mean? On purpose? To be shortening or easing the bottom piece of cloth. What piece of fabric do you put on the bottom when you are sewing? Do you want to put the longest piece of fabric on the bottom so the feed dog can shape and ease your garment together in a proper direction? Or do you want to put the short piece on the bottom so the feed dog gathers it up, makes it shorter, then you have to try to take the big one and jam it into the short one. This is why some people have trouble with sewing, because they're not keeping the longest piece on the bottom. You keep the long piece on the bottom in all cases and all places. If you remember that saying, you won't have any problem. Some of you are thinking, yeah, but what if they're the same size? Isn't that what a couple of you are thinking? What we're going to do in the next few minutes is explain to you what seams in your garment are supposed to have a little extra ease built into them. We'll tell you how much ease really belongs in those areas. That way you know which ones to put on the bottom, so your feed dog can do what? Ease and shape your garment together in the proper direction. Now your first thing you want to remember is there's 7 places that must be eased by the feed dog in order to shape the cloth. And the 7 places are this. Number 1, back side seams. Back side seams of anything must be eased by the feed dog. Take, for instance, if you have a dress pattern. Your back side seams of your dress pattern have to be 1/2 inch longer than the front side seams. So you measure your commercial pattern from the bottom of the armhole to the hemline. You measure your front of your commercial pattern from the bottom of the armhole to the hemline. If your back dress is not 1/2 inch longer, you have to adjust it so it is. How do you do that? Your commercial pattern company gives you an upper and lower adjusting line on your commercial pattern, don't they? So you add 1/4 inch in the bodice waist, 1/4 inch in the skirt waist. Now your back dress is 1/2 inch longer, isn't it? You understand we're talking about adjusting a commercial pattern? Those of you that make patterns for your own measurements with the system, you don't need to worry about all this. It's good to know it anyway, though, isn't it? Now, when you sew that dress, where do you keep both back side seams when you sew them? On the bottom next to the what? Yeah, on the bottom next to the feed dog. Now, it doesn't matter how you sew the garment. All we're going to get across is what you don't do. The instruction on a commercial pattern for sewing garment, they give you arrows, and they call that directional sewing. They say you have to sew at the arrows, so you're sewing with the grain of the cloth. Isn't that what everybody's been told? That's what everybody's been told, haven't you? How many of you knew that the direction which a garment's sewn doesn't have a thing to do with the grain of the cloth? How many of you knew that? couple of you did. I know you've all been told that, and it's not so. In fact, knit fabrics really don't have a grain as such. They're put together like a chain link fence. Now, the way you put the pattern on the fabric, of course, has to do with it. But the direction which your garment's sewn really doesn't have anything to do with the grain of the cloth. Yet everybody's been led to believe that. So you see why people are getting into trouble. In order to follow those arrows that are on those patterns, everybody's always okay on one side of their garment. They're always okay on one side, because they keep the back on the bottom, which is correct when sewing side seams, shoulders, and pant legs. As the feed dog eases the back side seam by easing the back, it'll pull the front of the fabric in the garment to the correct shape. But see where the mistake comes in is they flip the garment over, so the bulk of the fabric is on the outside of the machine. You understand what happens when it's flipped over? Front winds up on the bottom of this side. As the feed dog eases the front, by shortening the front, it'll pull the back of the cloth around in this direction. Now you see what's happening to your garment? It's being made a lopsided or a cockeyed or a twisted direction. Guess what's going to happen at the hem? The hem will never come up straight. See, we don't suggest you sew up one side, flip your garment over like most people do, and sew up the other. Because your garment will be made lopsided and cockeyed. There's no way the hem can come up straight. You're supposed to keep both back side seams on the bottom when you do sew them. Now, how are you going to do that? Doesn't make any difference. If you want to sew from the bottom up, fine. One side's going to be the easy side. But in order to keep the back on the bottom, you're going to have to shove all that bulk of that fabric on the machine to one side in order to sew from the bottom up. Do it that way if you want to. Doesn't it keep the back on the bottom? You understand why you don't sew up one side, flip your garment over? You understand why you don't flip it over? Even if you just learn that one thing out of the whole class. What one thing? Not to flip the garment over. It's worth the time you spent to come to class today. You understand why you don't flip it over? Okay. Another way to keep the back on the bottom is you can do it like we do in a garment factory. See, in garment factory, we sew sides with front on top. Now, if the front's on top, it leaves a longer back on the bottom next to the what? Next to the feed dog. In garment factory, we always sew up one side, we turn the garment around, and we go down the other. You understand why we do it that way? Because it is not necessary to sew from the bottom up. If it was, we'd be doing it like that. Either way you want to do it, doesn't matter. Both ways will keep the back on the bottom, won't it? Okay, now the next statement is what you're really concerned with. Next statement is this. See if you don't catch this. You ready? The feed dog will ease the longer back into the shorter front without pins or basting. See, if you pin or baste, it'll defeat the purpose of your sewing machine. What's that mean, defeat the purpose of your sewing machine? Yeah, if you pin or baste, the feed dog cannot ease the cloth together freely like it's intentionally designed to be doing. And in between the pins, there's going to be puckers and waves, and it's going to look tacky, and this is what you refer to as homemade. You understand why you don't need to pin or baste it? Because it's a ½ inch longer. Feed dog's intentionally designed to match it if it's a ½ inch longer. You understand how to sew side seams? Keep the back on the bottom. That's easy enough, isn't it? Next thing must be eased by the feed dog number 2. Back shoulders must be eased by the feed dog. You have to make sure your back shoulder pattern is 1/8 of an inch longer than the front shoulder pattern. If it's not, you adjust it so it is. Now, when you sew the shoulders, you have to match the fabric to start with. If you put the back on the bottom as you sew it across, what's intentionally been designed to match the fabric together perfectly without pins or basting and shape the cloth? Feed dog's been designed to match together if it's 1/8 longer. Now, if one shoulder is 1/8 longer, usually everybody has 2, don't they? Wouldn't that be total of 1/4? If you want to, you can sew straight across, shoulder point to shoulder point, straight across. That way the feed dog can ease it equally and properly all the way across. You understand how to sew shoulders? Keep the back on the bottom. You understand why you don't sew one shoulder, flip your garment over, and sew the other? What if you flip it over at the shoulders? What if you flip it over at the shoulders and the side seams? You understand what we're trying to tell you? Keep the back on the bottom when you sew your shoulders and side seams. That's easy enough, isn't it? Okay, now the next thing that must be eased by the feed dog, number 3, are the back pant legs. Back pant legs must be eased by the feed dog. You ever try to iron pants, have the legs come up even? Even on one leg, they're twisted like this. Why is the hem on your pant leg crooked like that? Same reason why the hem on your dress is crooked like that. Because you had the back on the bottom on the outside seam what was sewn, which is correct, but where did the mistake come in? You flipped your pants over. Front was on the bottom on the inseam was sewn, which is incorrect. So you see why it's winding up twisted, lopsided, or cockeyed at the hem? Your back slack pattern has to be 1/2 inch longer than the front slack pattern. Where does it have to be longer? 2 places. 1/4 inch longer in the back crotch, 1/4 of an inch longer on the lower adjusting line. Your pattern company gives you an upper and lower adjusting line on your back of your slack pattern, don't they? 1/4 inch longer in the back crotch, 1/4 inch longer on the lower adjusting line. Now your back slack is 1/2 inch longer, isn't it? Now when you sew the pants, you have to keep the back on the bottom. How are you going to do that? Doesn't make any difference. Probably the easiest way is to sew down one side and up one side by turning the slacks around. You understand why the back pant leg must be eased? Same reason why the back sides of a dress must be. It'll pull the front pant leg the correct shape. Very simple. You understand how to sew side seams, shoulders, and pant legs. Keep the back on the bottom. That's easy enough, isn't it? Okay, now the next thing that must be eased by the feed dog, number 4, is one of the most important things you'll ever hear of in sewing is number 4. Sleeve caps must be eased by the feed dog. Not the armhole like the pattern company tells you. Sleeve cap must be eased by the feed dog. And the correct fullness for sleeve cap is 1/4 inch more than the armhole. That's all it's supposed to be in there unless it's a gathered sleeve. You know how to put gathers in your sleeves, don't you? That's when you put the gathers in your sleeve before you put the sleeve in. So unless it's a gathered sleeve, you want to try it like this. The results will be self-evident. What you have to do is measure the armhole on your commercial pattern. How with a string's the easiest way. Take a string, lay it along the sewing lines of the armhole. This is only half the armhole, isn't it? If you had a back of the pattern and you joined it at the shoulder, isn't this your complete armhole laid flat? That's the back of the pattern. This is only half. This is the front of the pattern. Measure the armhole with a string. Let's say the armhole string measures 14 inches long, for example. Then you want to take a string, lay it along the sewing lines of the sleeve cap. Let's say the sleeve cap string is 15 inches long. Uh-oh, the sleeve's an inch longer than the armhole. Has to be 1/4 of an inch longer. That's the correct fullness for a sleeve cap. So how much too big is this particular sleeve? 3/4 inch too big. So the sleeve cap doesn't match the armhole when you bought the pattern. What? Sleeve doesn't match the armhole when you buy a pattern, so you have to make an adjustment or a correction. If it's a long sleeve, shorten it to about this length. It's easy to make the correction. From the center of your sleeve cap, you make yourself a slash. You start in the center, you take out 1/4 of an inch and you tape it. That's 1/4, isn't it? We have 3/4 to get rid of in this particular case, so diagonal on the other side, make another cut. Take out another 1/4, tape it. That's 2/4. We have 3/4 to get rid of, though, don't we? So diagonal on the other side, make another cut. Take out another 1/4, tape it. That's 3/4. See, for each 1/4 you have to get rid of, just keep making cuts till you get it all out of there but 1/4. Do not take any more than 1/4 of an inch out of each place or you'll change the style of your sleeve cap. Now your stitch line of your sleeve cap, this line was an inch longer, wasn't it? Wasn't this an inch longer? It's only supposed to be 1/4 inch longer. So we made an adjustment. We taught you how to take out the extra 1, 2, 3/4 that don't belong. How much longer is the stitch line of the sleeve cap now? Yeah, it's 1/4 longer and happens to match the armhole. Now that you have a sleeve that matches the armhole properly like it's supposed to, the sewing instructions are different than the instructions you get on commercial pattern. The sewing instructions are different than any sewing book you'll ever pick up. They're different than any class you'll ever go to. Now you can sew the shoulder seam in first. Remember what we talked about when sewing shoulder? Keep the back on the bottom. After you sew the shoulder seam in first, then you want to lay the sleeve cap flat. You understand what that means? Everything's open. Now you can sew the sleeve cap in before the sides and then sew up to here. Next statement is what we're really trying to tell you. Next statement is this, see if you don't catch this. You ready? With the sleeve cap on the bottom next to the feed dog, which is intentionally designed to shorten and ease the bottom piece of cloth, not the armhole, like the pattern company's telling you. Did you know the commercial pattern company has you with the armhole next to the feed dog? Guess what happens to your garment if the armhole's on the feed dog? Feed dog comes along, gathers up the armhole. It dish shapes the whole circle and makes it smaller. Not only that, it pulls your garment to the backward shape in that area. We don't suggest you wear your garment shaped backwards. It won't be as comfortable as it could or should be. Never pin or baste. Feed dog will do all the necessary easing. What if you have a two-piece suit sleeve where it doesn't connect under here? The sides are sewn up, the sleeve's all sewn up. The sleeve is in a tube like this. How in the world are you going to get that sleeve cap next to the feed dog if it's in a tube like this? That's why there's free arm sewing machines. You understand that's one of the things free arms are for? Sewing in two-piece suit sleeves? You understand why the sleeve cap must be eased by the feed dog and not the armhole? I'll show you why. The reason the sleeve cap must be eased is it pulls the armhole around. It pulls the armhole around to the correct shape it's supposed to be pulled in. Very simple. Okay, what comes after sewing in sleeves? Number 5, sewing on collars. I don't have much room here, but that's just as important as sleeves, isn't it? I guarantee you, when you get a commercial pattern, the collar doesn't match the neckline. They'll give you a collar 1.5 inches to 3 inches longer in that neckline. Now, how do you get that thing on there 3 inches longer? Oh, you can get it on there. I have no idea how you've been doing that, but you can get it on there. You understand the collar is only supposed to total 1/4 inch longer? And the only place your collar can be adjusted for length, the only place is at the center back seam here. So the first step would be to correct the mismatch between the collar and neckline. You have to lay the neckline flat. How do you lay the neckline flat? Didn't we show you a second ago when we laid the armhole flat? Join the shoulder. Remember, this is half the armhole, half the neckline. If this was the back of the pattern, that's your complete neckline and armhole laid flat. You follow this? I'll draw it up here now. This is the shoulder. This is the armhole over here, isn't it? This is the front of the pattern. This is the back. Let me get it over here a little further. This is the shoulder. Remember, this is the armhole. This is the front of the pattern. This is the back. You follow how to lay the neckline flat. Then you take your collar pattern and lay it on top. Match the collar seam as close as possible to neckline seam. Now, when you lay the collar pattern on top, make sure the center back of the collar right here extends 1/8 inch past center back of the neckline. Whatever extra collar you have past this 1/8 here, you cut that off. I make a better door than window, don't I? Okay. You've been having trouble with see during the whole class. Sorry about that. Okay. You understand this is only half the pattern? If half the collar is 1/8 longer, when you lay it on the fold, how much longer is the whole collar? 1/4 inch longer, isn't it? You understand why the collar of a pattern is supposed to be 1/4 inch longer than the neckline of a pattern? Haven't we explained all that before we started this part of the class? There's a certain amount of ease that has to be in certain seams of your garment. All we're doing is telling you what seams and exactly how much belong there. You understand the first mismatch is length of the collar? Where do you fix the length of the collar? At the center back. The other mismatch is in here. You see the dotted line? What part of your pattern is the dotted line? That's the neckline, isn't it? Again, all the sewing instructions say you have to do what with the extra fabric in the neckline? All the sewing books say you have to do what? There's that word ease again. You find that word ease a lot of places on those patterns. Where else do you find it? In the sleeve area. That's a nice way of telling you that the sleeve cap doesn't match the armhole properly for sewing, as we've pointed out to you. Neckline doesn't match the collar. They say, well, you have to ease that in or to get your collar rollover. Isn't that what everybody's been told? This is what you've all been led to believe, haven't you? How many of you knew that when the extra fabric in the neckline is eased into the collar, guess where the wrinkles are going to come out? They come out in two places, yes. The other side of the collar or the underside of the neckline. It has to come out somewhere. It has to show up and look homemade. We don't suggest you ease that in there because it doesn't belong in there. What you want to do is you want to remake your neckline to match your collar by cutting through both together. All that means is take your scissors and cut right along the inside collar line, just like so. One lady says, well, if you cut that neckline off of there, won't that make your neckline bigger? It's not going to make it that much bigger. But even if it did, When the fabric's being eased in, the neckline is going to get bigger the same way as if I cut it off on the pattern, besides the wrinkles coming out on the other side. It won't make it that much bigger, so don't worry. Now look, your stitch lines match perfectly now, don't they? You have a collar that's a quarter longer. We're not done yet. The collar would never roll over like that. See, you have a collar and an undercollar. Sometimes you have all three interfacing. You want to cut your undercollar or collar facing from your same collar pattern. Notice we're telling you to make your own facing. That way you know it's done right. Start from nothing at the corner here, because I sew the collar to the edge. To make your facing, you trim 1/8 of an inch off the inside collar line, just like so. Now look, the undercollar isn't as wide as the collar. It's 1/8 of an inch narrower. Well, that's perfect. You don't want that undercollar as wide. What's that for? Yeah, that's for a couple things. That's so it don't show up in the seam, and don't have any lumps and bumps, and that's how we get it to roll over properly. What if you had an interfacing? What's it the same size as? The undercollar, right? Because if it was the same size as the collar, you'd have all that bulk in there. It'd show up in the seam, be walking around like this, it wouldn't roll over properly. Now, when you sew the collar to the facing, you sew it together with the collar on top of the collar facing. You understand why the facing must be eased? Have you ever seen people walk around with the collars twisted, rolled, curled, turned, the fabric shaped in this direction? Have you ever seen that? You understand why the fabric's curled or shaped this way? 2 reasons why. Number 1, it was sewn backwards. Feed dog had shaped the cloth in the wrong direction. The other reason is the undercollar was probably the same width. You understand why the facing, the underside, has to be eased? As the facing's eased, it pulls the fabric to this direction rather than this way. We didn't tell you this earlier, but anytime you make a facing from your same pattern, you have to remember to make them a little bit longer. All facings and garments must be eased by your feed dog. All the neckline facings, all the armhole facings. You understand why the facing must be eased? Isn't the facing the underside of the cloth? As the facing's eased, it pulls the fabric to this direction rather than this way. So what's number 6 going to say up here? 6 is going to say facings. How do you know how much longer to make your facings? I'll put a question mark by that. It depends on the length of your facing. Listen to this. Every 9 inches of cloth, you have to have 1/8 of an inch extra ease. Every 18 inches of cloth, you'd have to have a 1/4 inch extra ease. Every 27 inches of cloth, you'd need 3/8 inch extra ease. Every 36 inches of cloth, how much you need? 1/2 inch extra ease. You understand every 9 inches you have to have an extra 1/8? You understand every 9 inches you have to have an extra 1/8? Okay. So it depends on the length of your facing, doesn't it? Okay, and the last thing must be eased by the feed dog, number 7, is hems.
Can we back up there just for a minute? When you're putting on a facing, which side goes down to the feed dog?
Facing goes next to the feed dog, okay? Hems must be eased by the feed dog. Now, in order for the hem to be eased, you'd have to fold your hem so the dress side is up. The dress side is obviously the outside, so the feed dog can ease the hem. If you don't want to do it that way, another way you can do it is you can put your hem in by hand. You can work it in, take it up as you go along. If you put it in by hand, you'd still be easing your hem that way, wouldn't you? You understand why the hem should be eased? Isn't the hem the underside of the cloth? As the hem's eased, it pulls the cloth around to the correct shape it's supposed to be pulled in. Very simple. 7 places must be eased by the feed dog in order to shape the cloth. Remember, your fabric's straight, your body's curved? You want the feed dog to ease those seams so it shapes the cloth. Back side seams, back shoulders, back pant legs, sleeve caps and collars, facings and hems. Now there's other places on your garment, isn't there? Isn't there other seams on your garment? You know what happens to the rest of your seams on your garment? They wind up being what we call in the garment industry matched seams. In other words, they wind up the same length, the same size. So suppose you sew those together without pinning them, what's going to happen? One will come up hanging longer than the other one, won't it? Now do you see why in home sewing they've taught you to pin or base things? They say pin it here, it'll match at this end, won't it? Pin it here, it'll match at this end too. See why they're telling you to pin? Get it to match at both ends. Put all the pins in the middle. Guess what happens in between those pins? You still have the easing effect that's intentionally produced by the feed dog on your sewing machine. So in between the pins, there'll be puckers and waves, and it's going to look tacky, and this is what you refer to as homemade. So what do you do about that? Lady says, well, I'll just lower my feed dog when I sew all my match seams. Won't that take care of it? What if you just lowered your feed dog? Won't feed the cloth through. That's just for darning and embroidering the special sewing. You understand you leave the feed dog up? One lady says, well, I'll just pull that bottom piece so hard the feed dog can't shorten it. I'd love to be the dealer working on your machine. Every 3 months you'd be walking through the door getting it adjusted again. You understand you don't go pulling against your feed dog because you're pulling the time in your sewing machine off. So how do you sew all your match seams without pinning them? We suggest you change your foot. We suggest you sew all your match seams on your garment. What are the match seams? Everything but what? Yeah, everything but those 7. We suggest you sew your match seams on your garment, which is everything but those 7, with what's called a walking foot, instead of your regular pressure foot. What's a walking foot? Right here it is. It runs like your buttonholer. Your needle bar runs the thing. What it does is, as the feed dog shortens the bottom, this will shorten the top along with it. So if it shortens the top along with it, it makes the fabric come up even without pins or basting. So if it makes the fabric come up even, it could be called an even feed, couldn't it? So where do you use the walking foot or even feed if it makes the fabric come up even? Very simple. Where? Every place but where? Every place but those 7. Use it on all the match seams that don't need shaped. What are the match seams? Everything but those 7. Center backs match don't need shaped. You have to use a walking foot without pins or basting. Center fronts match doesn't need shaped. You have to use a walking foot without pins or basting. The underarm sleeve seam is a match seam. You have to use a walking foot without pins or basting. Guess what darts are? Darts are match seams, don't need shaped. You have to use a walking foot without pins or basting. Waistlines are match seams. Crotch seam and slacks is matched. Putting pockets on, top stitching. How about making drapes? One lady says, every time I make drapes, one comes up hanging along at the bottom. I can never figure this out. I'll bet you know why now, don't you? Drapes don't need shaped. What happens when you have drapes as tall as that wall? By the time you get up to the top, how much you think the feed dog would shorten that bottom piece? Didn't we tell you earlier? Every 9 inches it takes 1/8. So if you measure the length of the wall, you'd be able to tell us exactly how much one would be longer, wouldn't you? Drapes don't need shaped. How about machine quilting? This is an absolute must with machine quilting. If nothing else, you'd use it to match plaids and stripes if you sew how you've been sewing. What's the walking foot for? 2 words. Most sewing. Anytime you have 2 identical length pieces of fabric that don't need shaped without pins or bastings, where you have to use a walking foot. Pillowcases, bedspreads, mending, drapes, and machine quilting. Oh, some people use it on plastic, vinyl, leather, canvas, burlap, alter suede. That's not what it's for, but it'll help there. So you have to have it. You know, there's only 2, 3 machines in the world this thing comes with, the standard equipment. The Pfaff Sewing Machine Company, they build it right in their top 3 lines of machine. They call it a dual feed or a matchmaker. That's only under $1,500 to $2,500 sewing machine. Who has a Pfaff with a dual feed? I've got one of those. See, I don't need that attachment on that machine because it's not an attachment. It's actually part of the machine. It's the only company in the world that builds it in there is Pfaff. Ricard. Does anybody have a Ricard sewing machine? Some models of Ricard come with the walking foot attachment. Some models, but not all of them. The only other company who give you something like this right now is Singer. In fact, Singer was the first people to invent this thing. In 1955, Singer invented this attachment, which they call an even feed. If you have a more expensive Singer, one of those computer models, you may have this even feed thing along with it. Otherwise, it usually doesn't come as standard equipment. It's something you have to buy extra. And you have to have it to sew your match seams, matching plaids and stripes, if nothing else, and sewing the identical length pieces of fabric, such as pillowcases, bedspreads, mending, drapes, and machine quilting. Who has a walking foot? Who has one? A couple of you do? Who uses theirs? Where have you used yours? Matching plaids and stripes, where have you used yours?
I have both regular and I have a commercial one.
Okay, where have you used it? Can you think of any place?
Nylons and leather.
Oh, see, some people use it on heavy materials. Remember, it helps there? Who else has one that's used it?
Well, quilt.
Yeah, most people that have it use it for matching plaids and stripes or machine quilting, if nothing else. Yeah, you understand there's, yes?
I have one question. I see these commercial type sewing machines, which I don't have advertised right now, and they always say with a walking foot. Is that what they're talking about?
No, the walking foot on a commercial machine is designed for heavy materials. It's still called a walking foot or even feed, but on a commercial machine, on a sewing machine, they use it for sewing leather and real thick things is what they use that walking foot for, okay? All right, now notice there's 3 sizes, long, short, and slant. If you want to mail, just like the roller foot, if you want to mail for them later, they're only $20. But you got to tell them what kind of machine you have. I don't know which length to send you. If you want to get one at the class, the walking foot would be 15 instead of 20. And I want to caution you about something. I won't bother to sell it to you if it don't fit, because you just have to hassle with sending it back. It doesn't go on any Bernina. If you got a Bernina, the roller foot will, but the walking foot won't. You got to buy it from them and pay their price. It won't. It's $50 to $70. Yes. Okay.
No wonder I don't.
Yeah, it's $50 to $70. Depends on the dealer. Okay, it won't go on any top-of-the-line machine except Singer. If you could even get one, they're 15 instead of 20. Who wants a walking foot?
You won't want a biking on it.
Yeah, what kind of machine you got? How new is it?
2 years, 3
Oh, brand new. Is it a top-of-the-line? Sorry, it won't go on it. Kind of machine you got?
It's biking.
Oh, the older ones that goes on, yeah. Who else wants one? Kind of machine you got? Oh, yeah, that's right. You just had the small, yeah, listen. See, I won't bother to sell it to you if it don't fit, because you just have to hassle wrapping it up and sending it back. Some of those newer top-of-the-line machines, you got to buy it from the company that made the machine. They're about $30 to $70, just depends. Who else wants one? Kind of machine you have? Oh, slant needle, yeah. Listen, ladies, what's the walking foot for? Well, okay. What's the walking foot for? Match seams. What's the roller foot for? You understand the difference between the two? Okay. Now, you understand the difference? You understand why you have to have both? Again, I'm going to put it bluntly. If you don't do anything else about any other tool in the class, you have to have that walking foot or roller foot. Those are tools you would use regardless of whose pattern you work with, aren't they? Those 2 feet? Okay, yes?
Did you say there's a long and a short?
Yeah, I've given you the right size. Okay, now, zippers. Where's my zipper? Okay, now listen to this. When you sew your zipper in, don't sew up one. First of all, don't use the zipper foot to sew the zipper in. Use the roller foot. Remember I told you there's enough room on the side of the roller foot to where you can catch enough of the edge of the zipper? It'll help feed the zipper in a lot smoother. A lot of people use roller foot to sew zippers in. Did I tell you that earlier? Yes, I did, didn't I? Yeah. Now, when you sew your zipper, don't sew up one side and down the other, because what's feed dog going to do to your zipper? Yeah, feed dog will shift it one way on one side or one way on the other. When you sew your zipper, you have to sew both sides in the same direction. Whether it be up or down doesn't matter, but sew both sides the same way, you follow? Now, the problem with zippers, they move when you try to sew them. So instead of pinning or basting zippers, a lot of people tape them. Now, they have stuff you can get called seam tape. If you use the seam tape, just be careful. You don't sew through it. You won't have any problem. There's people who use masking tape. There's some just use this regular Scotch tape. Instead of pinning or basting zippers, they tape it down. It's probably best to tape it lengthwise and sew alongside the tape. If you tape it crosswise, sew up to the tape and then pull it off. There's also the double-face basting tape. It's thin and sticky on both sides. You have to be careful how you use it, because if your needle hits, it kind of sticks in the fabric. How many uses tape for zippers? A couple of you do? What kind do you use?
I used masking tape, it didn't work.
Masking tape? Why didn't it work for you?
Well, I didn't know that you were supposed to do the masking tape.
Oh, yeah, you don't sew through it now. You're supposed to sew alongside it. Who else tapes it? What kind of tape do you use? You got to be very careful with that double-face tape that your needle doesn't hit it. Well, who else tapes it? What kind of tape do you use? Regular Scotch tape? Why do you tape it? Well, main reason is it's faster. That's not the main reason is it keeps it from shifting or moving. Anytime you can tape something instead of pin or baste, much faster, keep it held in place better. If you don't want to tape it down, there's another way you can do it. You can do it like we do in the garment factory. See, in some of the garment factories, the zippers come in a big, gigantic roll. Some of them, not all of them. And the slides for the zipper in a box the other side of the factory. In fact, if you notice a lot of times on ready-made pants, especially men's pants, you'll find a zipper goes way up into the waistband or way down into the bottom of the crotch. Don't even bother to cut him any specific length, because you only pull it up or down so far. Isn't that right? Okay. This will work on metal or nylon zipper. It'll work on either one. First, you buy your zipper extra longer than you need it. What? Yeah, you buy it longer than you need it. I know a lot of you are afraid to do that, but do it anyway. Buy it longer than you need it. As soon as you get your pattern all adjusted, your fabric cut out, when you get your zipper home, rip the stop off the bottom of the zipper. I just bought this zipper earlier. So as you see, rip it off, tear it off, pull it off, cut it off. See how we cut the stop off, but we still have the tab, the fabric, or the lap there? Then all you've got to do is separate the zipper. Take the slide completely off. Now you have two separate sides to your zipper. With your seam open, you sew each side in separately. You sew this side in, you sew this side in. How in the world are you going to put that slide back on there?
Hope you get it even.
Same way you took it off from the bottom. See, all you have to do is feed each opening of the zipper through each opening of the slide. It'll work. How do you know it's even before you zip it up? How do you know it's even? It doesn't have to be even. If you want to make sure it's even, fine. Just look at these two tabs. When it look like it's even, you hold it, you zip it right up. 19 out of 20 times, it comes up perfect at the top, just like it did. And if it doesn't matter, because it's longer than you need it. How do you finish it off the bottom? You don't even need to put a stop on there. What do? You bar tack it, you sew it across the bottom. So you can sew it in separately and put that slide on. You just saw me do it. It's not as difficult as it sounds. In fact, a lot of garment factories are still done like that. People that alter clothing. If people that reupholster furniture, zippers are sewn in separately a lot of times. People that alter clothing. If you have a zipper that's broken with a few teeth missing, if they're missing out of the middle, there's nothing you can do. Separate the zipper. Wherever the teeth are missing, you bar tack it across there. When you get all done, your zippers are going to look like this. Some of you know what we're talking about. It's going to look like this. Does anybody sew their zippers in separately? You want to try that. A lot of people like that better than taping it. You know the real reason why we told you about that is if you have one that's broken, you might be able to fix it like that. Now, as far as starting with your nearest correctly sized pattern when working with a commercial pattern, most of you have been told to select your patterns by your bust size, haven't you? You know what happens to a lot of you when you do that? It's too big every place else. So if you select your pattern by your bust size, it's too big every place else, then what do? If it's too big? You get the next smaller size pattern and make it larger across the bust. Suppose you select your pattern by your bust size, it's too small every place else, then what do? You get the next larger size pattern, make it smaller across the bust. You understand it's easier to make a larger small bust correction than it is to try to change the width of the shoulder, circle the neckline, circle the armhole. You understand that's the most logical starting point on a commercial pattern? Now those of you that make patterns for your own measurements with the system, you don't need to worry about that. It's good to know it anyway though, isn't it? Another thing, a lot of you don't change needle on your sewing machine till it breaks. You should change needle on the machine at least every 8 hours of sewing every couple of 2 or 3 garments. Guaranteed after one knit garment you'd have a dull needle. You know what happens to a dull needle? Instead of spreading the fibers on your fabric, it has to pierce them. You know what that does? That slows the needle down. You know the little hook that comes around there? Time the needle gets down, her hook's already been around there. Sorry, I'm not waiting on you. Start skipping stitches on you. Skips enough stitches that throws the timing in your sewing machine off. Then you have to get it repaired. Everybody knows you want to use a ballpoint needle with knits. Knits are coming back with synthetic fabric. You know what the finest sewing machine needle is you can use? Finest sewing needle you can use is a Schmetz needle. How many's never heard of Schmetz needles? SCHMETZ, that's the finest sewing needle there is. They make a lot of the European-made machine needles. They make Viking, New Home, Pfaff, Bernina. Some may have been using them, just didn't know because they have other names on them. How many does use Schmetz needle? A couple of you? How many uses tailor's chalk? A lot of people complain that the tailor's chalk leaves a grease mark on your cloth. Some of it does because it's made with a paraffin base, so some people use soap. You know when you come down a soap, can't use anymore. Use white soap on dark cloth, dark soap on light cloth. If you're going to use tailor's chalk, there's a kind that works. It's a kind that's made with French clay. Says right on it, made with French clay. Lady says, oh, I have some of that French clay tailor's chalk, and it doesn't even mark on a lot of fabric. You know why it doesn't mark? Because there's no instructions on how to use it. How do you get it to mark? Yeah, you have to get it wet. If you get it wet, it marks on any fabric. How does it come out? When you get your garment clean and iron your seam, it comes out. Another thing is pressing. A lot of people don't press as much as they should. You should press your seam each time you sew one. And before you put the garment on, you should send it out. Send it out to where? To the dry cleaners and have it professionally pressed and cleaned. See, they can put a chemical in your fabric. They can put this sizing chemical in your fabric. They have special machines with special heat that's done with. There's really no way that you can do a good job as that special machine. A lot of money in garment industry spent just on pressing those garments. How many does send their garments out? A couple of you do? You'll be amazed at the difference the result when you get that thing back. You know how to put a crease in, don't you? Vinegar and water and a brown paper bag. How do you get it out? Same way. Lady asked one day, red or white? Red or white. See, it's those little things nobody ever tells you about, needles and chalk and stuff like that. You know how to sew straight seams? If you have trouble sewing straight seams and a carpenter wants to draw a straight line on it, cut a straight line on a board, he marks it first, doesn't he? If you have trouble sewing straight seams, mark the wrong side of your cloth with soap or tailor's chalk. Then you can sit back and follow the chalk line when you sew, rather than get down and look at that little guide in your sewing machine. See, things as simple as that you never even think of. Okay, now does anybody have any questions about anything? Yes?
What did you say the price for the walking foot was?
$15 at the class. Anybody have any questions about anything? Yes? Yes?
You told us that it should be a half inch longer, make adjustments, and a quarter inch longer on the back cross, and a quarter inch longer on
Lower adjusting line. Your pattern company gives you the number 3, which is the length line, where you adjust the length. Lower adjusting line, okay? Okay, listen carefully. Oh, how many of you got that little roller foot today? A couple of you did? Whatever you're taking home with you today, even if it's only one little roller foot or one roll of paper, it has to be listed on your list there. Now, what's more important than that, whatever has to be mailed to you that we are out of stock, like the design book 1, the blue one, or all 3 design books, it has to be listed on your paper there, otherwise you won't get it, because normally we have everything for you to go home, you follow? So whatever, if you can go ahead and add your own invoice up, you have to add the tax on at the end, there's no way around that. What's the tax here? What is it here?
I'm sorry, I'm
Okay, I think they like their price better, okay. Okay, now when you make your check out, make it out to that European School of Design. If you're going to put it on your credit card, don't bother to put your numbers down there, because we have to put it through that machine thing anyway. So unless there's any more questions, I have 2 more questions. Number 1, did everybody learn one new thing you never heard of before? Everybody learn one new thing today? Okay, then it's worth the time you spend to come to class. Did I work hard? Do I deserve something? Thank you. Okay. All right, now how many of you got this large cutter mat and guide? Let's make sure we pass these out, because there's always somebody that leaves theirs. How many of you got the large cut? A couple of you, 3 or 4? Here. Yeah, we better give you these now. Otherwise, sometimes people forget them. You got one? You have one coming? You have one coming? Oh, who do I make the pattern for? Desi, that's your pattern, isn't it?
Pardon me?
That's your pattern?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you give this? Yeah, I'll give it to you. Hold on. What? It goes on. That's a slant needle. Yeah, absolutely positive. Yep, that's the first slant they made. Slant that's the one for Singer slants, yes. Okay. Yes?
What I think you,
Yeah, I'll fill it out for you, yeah.
what I think you want.
Oh, we don't need anything. That's all right. Oh, listen, if you some of us don't get paid but once a month or once every couple of weeks. If you'd like some of the tools, if you need to make a post-dated check for a while, it's not a big problem as long as you let us know when you come up here. We don't take these checks and run to the bank with them. As long as you let us know, it's not really a big problem, long as it isn't too long. Okay, as soon as you get your invoice total, come up here. We'll see if we can help you.
You want to remove that?
Yeah, let me get this out of the way. Oh, Desi, here's your pattern. The curves are 22. Yeah.
I can help some of you over here.
Here you go. Here's Desi's pattern.
Bruce, those slant roller feet are right here. Some ladies missing.
Oh, yeah, the other lady back there needs a slant. And she's got her slant already, right? Yeah. Yeah, we have some more here. Okay, you've got yours all filled out?
All filled out.
All right.
There's a little shank on your machine. Loosen that set screw and that shank off there, and then this whole thing goes on it.
Okay. Oh, it's all filled out. I'm standing there. Oh, listen. Oh, I forgot to tell you. Where's these catalogs? If you want to, you can have one of these catalogs before you. Will somebody put these back on the table in case I forget? Back there on the table in case I forget to give it to you up here. You can have one of these catalogs or brochures. But remember, the prices aren't any good on those.
Anything else you get in the pattern?
What is it?
Children's and roller.
Yes, of course. Oh, yeah. You were here yesterday. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah, you need to look at it.
Yeah, we have some more somewhere. Okay. System, 2 curves and 2 paper.
You're gonna have to leave that over here. I won't be able to get at it.
Name and phone number at the bottom, please.
Okay.
Okay. Here's your system, 2 curves and 2 paper. You got yours filled out there? Oh, that's all right. I'll figure it out for you somehow. That 5.5% is kind of.
Bruce,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to leave that over here so I can get it too. That's it.
They all have credit cards today. That's what happens when they. There you go. For those of you that are watching the video at home, you'll notice the prices on your invoice. Some are much less than a live seminar. The reason is the advertising is less and we don't have to pay for the meeting rooms. Therefore, we can pass the savings on to you. You'll also want your friends to see the video. For placing orders only, by phone, call collect, the number listed on your order form. In certain areas, call toll-free the 800 number listed on your order form. By mail, send your check or money order to the address listed on your order form. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we are waiting to hear from you.